going on, everybody? Looks like we're live. I'm freezing to death. We got this door open next to me. It goes to the utility room, and it's been open and it's cold in there. Brr. All right, y'all know the drill. Let me get these links. There it out. I'm live, babe. She doesn't know. She doesn't know. And then talk to herself. It's cold, cold. Got a noisy chair. Man, I hope everybody's warmer than I am right now. So cold here. Of course, it's probably warmer now than it has been in the past 2 weeks. Let me see what temp we got here. Yeah, probably in the 20s. Cold. Let's see. Let's share these links. What's going on, Clint? You can see here. I'll send you that link in a minute. Yeah. What's going on, Curtis? What's up, Cave Daddy? What's up, Death? What's going on, Chris? Yeah, Billy, what's up? We're freezing. That's what's going on. Man, the utility room door's been open. God, it's so cold in there. Brr. Okay, let's see. Let me share these links out of here. And for those that see some advertising stuff about books and stuff by DIY or Distilling 101, that's not my Distilling 101. So I'll make people sure that I say a lot of people might think that that's me putting out that book, and it's not me. It's so cold. So who's everybody got tomorrow for the Super Bowl? Who's you? I know a lot of people will be like, I don't carry the team. Damn, that audio on my phone is shot. That sounded bad. Sounded really bad. I'd like maybe Seattle to win just because the Hawks are New England's won so many times. Give somebody else a little time in the spotlight, maybe. There's a lot of people either love the Patriots or hate them. I guess there's not a lot of in between with that team. A few more links, and I'm sure they'll stop me soon. Well, they never know. One week it's one way, and next week it's different. So I'll just have to see. Either way, we'll be done in just a minute. Man, I should have left that door. I am freezing sitting here. So hopefully everybody can hear me okay. I didn't even look to see which mic was actually turned on. Not sure. Sometimes some things I have to go through and set it manually every time, and some things just defaults. It looks like it's gonna let me share it to just about everybody. That's nice. Yeah. Whew. Cold, cold, cold. All right. All right, now let's see here. I finally got my game rig put together. I was having issues with the memory. Oh, Sheen, if you're on here. All right, let me get back here. Whew. All right, let's see. Left off with Death. Let's see, Death and then Chris. Hillbilly. That's right. Left off Hillbilly. Yeah. I have a sweatshirt on. I've got this shirt on. I don't have my sweats on. Ooh. But yeah, it's because that door was open. Usually it's not too bad right here, but that utility room, we've been letting it stay a little cooler. Frozen drinks. Damn, that just make you chill inside. Going on, bike boy. Man, it's so cold. Baltimore City. Now things over in Baltimore, Maryland. What's going on, Steven? Good to see you, brother. Yeah. Yeah, where's the America show going to be on? Oh, yeah, I did forget to put the comments up. Yeah, I was in a big hurry tonight, man. After dinner, kind of dozed off. I woke up and it was 7:53, and I was moving as fast as I've moved in quite some time. I'm surprised I got everything. Oh yeah, I didn't check my audio. I guess everybody can hear me. I can see the little green lights, but I didn't check to see what microphone it defaulted to. Oh, it's went to this new mic. Man, this chair's getting so squeaky. You probably can't hear me over it. What's going on, Francis? Good to see you. Oh, she's busy tonight. I want to stop and show support. Appreciate you, brother. Curious about massive. There's a lot of hybrid recipes in the mainstream, like adding grains and fruit. Call those mountain brandies when you do both of those together, kind of a mountain brandy. Some people say split brandy, but I don't know. I thought the split brandy was just two different fruits, but I don't know. But yeah, mountain brandies. There's a lot of corn based brandies that people do. I guess you can use any kind of grain. Apple rye is another good popular example of a mountain brandy, apple and rye. So yeah, it's the more common than people realize, but there's not a lot of different ones. You probably won't find a lot of different ones. You'll find probably some, corn and peach maybe, and some apple and rye, and it's those traditionally two of the more popular brandies. So trying to think of any other ones that are pretty mainstream, and I can't Oshin, but there's no rules anymore. All the rules are out the door, so you can do what you want. I asked me earlier about. I think Frank was asking me about making vodka out of potatoes and stuff. And it's like you got to cook your potatoes. For those that are listening, Frank asked about how to do vodka with potatoes. He got in some free potatoes, a bunch of free potatoes. So I'm like, see, with your potatoes, it doesn't take as long to gelatinize the starch out of those, right? And when we talk about gelatinizing starch, it's just releasing the starch, from the vegetable or grain itself. And so it's about 45 minutes at 185, 90, steeping, boiling, cooking temperatures for your potatoes. And you'll do those just the same as you would any other grain or anything else. When you're converting the starch, you use that alpha, high temp alpha, and your glucose just the same. Want to know what percentages of potatoes to get water, and it's real high. If you just want to go and convert starches in the potatoes, and it's going to be let me see if I can find my chart. I'm not sure if it's on my chart. I didn't have my chart when I talked to him, but I imagine it's going to be. Is this the chart here? I can't see it very well. I don't know if this is just fruit or what. Let me look at this chart. I can't hardly. Yeah, let's see, tomato. But that's a fruit. Potatoes. Okay, 6 to 8. Yeah, 8 to. So yeah, Frank, I'll send you this chart, buddy. And for those that want this chart, you can find it on the militia in the files in the militia moonshine militia page and in the DIY shine and stuff page. So all these charts will be in there. But 8 or 9, I think I might have told him like 8 pounds per gallon. And then you're going to have to use some sugar along with that, so you'll just use your hydrometer once you get done with it. I think if you use just potatoes, it's going to be, 15 or 20 pounds at least. It's going to be a bunch. I think the thing I was reading earlier said a whole bunch more, but let's see if I can see that. It's hard for me to see that. Let me turn comments off real quick here. Got my magnifying glass here. It's small on my screen. I'd imagine it is on your all's too, but yeah, let's see. Pomegranate, persimmon, potato 6 to 8. Yeah. So that's about right. I think I told him 8. I didn't have my chart with me. But yeah, anytime you do anything like that, that's what we have the hydrometer for. It can tell us exactly how much sugar, we're going to want to add. Good. Let's see, can't see this. Hang down from my face. Good. It's getting kind of by the ceiling fan there, it looks like. Have a good one, O'Sheen. Good to see you, brother. Don't work too hard. That's good. Good to hear, brother. I appreciate it. Yeah, I knew when some other people were having, trouble hearing me with the other microphone. I guess sometimes my voice gets a little lower and raspy, and I tend to get a little more quiet and mumble a lot. What's going on, Mikey? Good to see you, brother. What's going on, Mash Brothers? What's going on, Steven? Good to see you, bro. Got to buy a 200 amp breaker to replace the shine shack. 5,500 watt elements, huh? Yeah, a lot of times, are you using the breaker to turn it on and off? Because a lot of times, if you use the breaker for and you turn it on and off a lot with the breaker, they'll kind of wear down over time. If you use that kind of as a switch. Yeah, it's definitely cheaper to buy 150 or 200 breaker than it is like 100 or something special. They get expensive. What's going on, Tyler Ray? What's up? I got a wheat whisker brewing. That sounds good. Some good wheat whiskey. Oh, we don't have any specific topic tonight. We'll talk about what everybody talks about. We hopefully we'll get some questions and we can talk about the questions as people ask it. Hope that. Did you malt that wheat or in 100% wheat? That's gonna be some good liquor. I'm not run mine yet. I bought some for Christmas. I've got to build the SCR. If you do it, I think the SCR is the way to go. The PID is let me find the acronym. We talked about that last week. Okay. Yeah, proportional integral derivative controllers. So they kind of cut on and off, on and off, on and off. Like I was talking about the stove, how they regulate voltage that way and temperature that way by cutting on and off, kind of like a stove with a thermatically controlled, right? Thermostat controlled. So that's what a PID does. And read a little bit about them. I've read about them before, but I've never used them, and I'm going to start. I've always been skeptical and always worried about the elements, the scorching, and having the whiskey that close to the heat. It's literally in the mash, so that was always a big concern of mine, and really worried about it, and so. According to everybody that uses them, once they use it, they'd never go back. And there's some, I'm reading about the disadvantages to it. But yeah, the SCR is the way to go. Come on, Glory. Good to see you, brother. Come on, Beaker Dabs. What's up, Roy? Good to see you. I'm a little cold, brother. A little cold. I'm not gonna lie. A little chilly over here. We're warming up. We got that door shut now. We got the heater moved a little closer than usual. I don't have my sweatshirt on, so I'm a little cool. I'm just got a felt shirt on. Or flannel, I guess. Yeah, we're supposed to get back up into the 60s this week, but it's going to get cold again after that. It's just a day or two. We'll go from 21 day to 60 the next, and I was talking to somebody about that earlier. It's like that right there is exactly why they like aging whiskey in Kentucky, because it can be 21 days, 60 the next, back to 20 the next day, and man, it's cold. Yeah. Most people, once they go to electric, they don't go back to propane unless they, are at a place that they're not able to plug in. That's the thing about the electric is it's initial cost and setting up and getting the elements and getting the ferrules, putting your boiler and getting to that point. It's a little bit expensive, but in the long run, what you save in propane costs will more than pay for the difference, because electric's really cheap unless you're in an area that where you get real cheap gas. You could run on natural gas instead of propane, and electric's cheap. You get on a rural electric or something somewhere that might be kind of reversed, but for the most part, most people, it's electric's going to be a fraction of what the propane costs are. What's going on, Evan? Good to see you, brother. Yeah, I might have to have me a little horse. Oh Lord, I forgot I had to mention my internet went down, and I had to, I guess, upgraded my internet for the same price. So that was nice. So I got the fiber here. We got fiber available where I'm at, and for the same price, I could go to 2 gig from 1 gig. I guess T-Mobile took over or bought out MetroNet here, or working with them, partnering with them. So I had 1 gig net, and so I upgraded to the 2 gig for the same price, and I got the price locked in for 10 years. So that's good, because they always change the price. Most everybody out there, they get you in at that introductory offer, and then they start jacking up. Next thing you know, you're paying $100 a month, So I was really not stoked to see that I'm going to only be paying $70-some a month, but I need to go get that jar I hid. Should be good and cold. It's good and cold. Man. Bird. Man, it's chilly, chilly, chilly. Awesome. You'll love that, man. That's a nice setup right there now. 20 gallon. Hell yeah. You should go ahead and probably order you an element and a controller and get to work. So I don't know if he includes that in some of those or not, but I'd tell him to put me at least put you a 2-inch ferrule in the bottom for upgrading it to in the future. If you haven't done it, if you hadn't shipped it yet, he probably added on there for not a whole lot more, and it'll get you ready to go electric if you ever decide to. Like we were just talking about, it's a lot cheaper than propane, and everybody swears by it, and everybody that does it, I've tasted a lot of liquor made with it, and it's not scorched, and it doesn't have that bad flavor like I was afraid it would. So it's gonna be all right. Yeah, they are, man. After you get a little old, man, after you eat, I'm like a big old hog, man. I got Ann all cuddled up next to me, got a little blanket, watching TV. Shit, I'm sawing logs in no time, man. That's my happy place. What's going on, Tyler? Yeah, we just got finished done eating a Scotch stew. That sounds good. Drink the Scotch stew. Put a little Scotch in it. I know what you're talking about. But yeah, we watched. I don't know if y'all remember Fallen Skies, an old science fiction series, 5 seasons. Like long. We just got finished watching that. We kind of binge watched it. Thank you, Mike, for the honey shines. Another one of them honey makers out there. Got him some honey. He and I met, and his wife Michelle, me and Ann met, had dinner together. It was nice, and they were on their way to a honey convention. I didn't know they had a convention here in Kentucky for honeybees. Big convention, he said. They have it in Louisville every year. I guess they moved it from somewhere else to Louisville this year, or maybe in recent years. Back on February, I made my spice. Yeah, I remember somebody were talking about cranberry corn 130 proof. That sounds like a perfect proof to me, man. Did you proof it down any, or a lot of people don't like it up at that hot, that warm. Mine 130. That's about my upper limits. I'll drink more and higher, but it's just sipping it, But a lot of things I'll leave at a 130. My grappa I left at 130. Man, it was so smooth at 130. It tasted like you was drinking 100, like honey. I mean, it tastes like you was drinking 100 proof. And it was 130, man. It was kind of dangerous. Kind of dangerous. Heating up the still as we speak. I like to hear that. I'm just heating up my innards as that honey goes down. Just what the doctor ordered. Thank you. Thank you. Clint ran 25 gallons this afternoon. Hit the breaker and the tails. Okay. What did you ever say? So do you turn it on and off using the breaker, or I know some people use the breaker to cut theirs on and off with, and probably be a good idea to, if you can find a rheostat, to turn it on and off, and that way you can adjust the power, up and down. I guess that's pretty much what the SCR does, though. It's basically a high priced, high power rheostat that allows you just to dial in and out the power and adjust the power instead of thermostatically controlling it. You just adjust it, and that's the way my stove is, my old stovetop. So I guess it's got an SCR power controller in it instead of a PAD. But with that, it's just you just adjust the dial, and it gets hotter and hotter as you adjust the dial, and you turn it down, and it's got a constant temperature, but it doesn't cut on and off thermostatically. And I'm not sure at lower temperatures it might turn on and off thermostatically, but when you get like three quarters, or a little over 3/4 to high, like 8 or 9, 9 I think is the high. So once you get to about 7.5, near 8, I don't think it cuts off ever. So, but you can check if your stove's cut on and off. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it will cause some smearing. It causes the temperatures to fluctuate in the steel, and it doesn't get that good constant temperature that you want. You really want to try to get a constant temp. I know a lot of people will bring theirs up till it stops dripping and cut it back just a tad and adjust the drip that way. That's okay, because you're not jacking it back and forth throughout the whole run. But you can imagine turning the temp up and down, up and down, up and down, up, throughout the whole run, and it does cause some confusion, I guess, in the distillation, because it's mixing the boiling points, and I don't know, it just causes a little bit of smearing. It's harder to make cuts when you do it that way. Corn and peach, yeah, that's fairly common. Corn and strawberry, yeah, and apple. Corn and peach and apple is pretty common. Strawberry, not as much, but yeah, those are both fairly common split, mountain brandies. It's not bad. It's probably no harder than doing like a all wheat for sure, Um, but it settles out. The potato flakes settle out. If you're using flakes, you don't have to gelatinize it, right? So if you're using the flakes, you can just bring it up to whatever temp the alpha amylase calls for and use it. You don't have to worry about gelatinizing it for 45 minutes. Potatoes will gelatinize pretty quickly, but they have what's called a restrictive starch in them. So a resistant starch. I'm sorry, resistant starch. And so when you have a lot of resistant starches, they don't convert real easily when you're using amylase, right? So that's the resistant. They're resistant to the amylase and to being broken down is what they're resistant to, the breakdown. So you can gelatinize them pretty quick, but if you want to get rid of a lot of the resistant starches, you'll have to go ahead and cook them for 45 minutes or so. But like if you're using potato flakes, you don't have to worry about that at all, because they're already gelatinized and there's no resistant starches and those at all. They've already been, gelatinized and cooked in the flaking process. It's kind of like a steam rolling, I guess, for flake corn as well. Same thing, right? So, but yeah, it's not so bad. I mean, you are using that pretty high, 8 pounds per gallon. So there's a lot of potato mash in there, but a lot of it gets consumed and it'll settle out, and you can mash it, right? Mashed potatoes. Huh? Yeah, you can press them out and just let them settle and clear. Cold crash them this time of year pretty easily. Been gaming. What you been playing? Have you tried out the Arc Raiders? Been to Spernanza? I know. I think Warzone new season started yesterday or day before. I haven't. I played the first week of last season and kind of gave up. It's still too much cheating going on in there. It's too frustrating for me. I get pretty fired up when I know people are cheating and I spectating them and they're wall hacking and aimbotting, and it's like, but yeah, I'm having fun with the Arc Raiders. Going on, Wayne? Good to see you, brother. Hope y'all are doing good. Looking forward to seeing you, Amanda, again. Y'all, are you and Amanda doing another show this month, or who you got with you this month, Wayne? Need to get Wayne on there more than once a month, Faux show. A lot of good content. I like his Amanda's show. That was real good. I enjoyed that. Runs a bit though. That sounds good. That sounds awesome. Looking for a good pizza dough recipe. I'm looking for one for Ann. I should say. I'm looking for Ann a good pizza dough recipe. So we can make us some homemade pizzas. She makes some of the best sauces and marinaras, and I'm like, well, this throw some. We got tons of cheese. We get great deals on cheese, so I'm like, why don't we start making our own pizza? Hell yeah! What's going on, Mike? It's Saturday night, man. I think I have one with you, brother. It warmed me up pretty well. Yeah, I was thinking, split brandy. We talked about that once before. It's like, in some circles, split brandy is using two different fruits, and others call it, just I don't know, but mountain brandy is what I always considered a grain and a fruit combined. But yeah, I think it depends on where you're located geographically to what it's called. I did some research on it and I've never found anything concrete. I think that's about what I ended up finding about it. But either or split, I always consider though the split would be two different fruits, but that's not going on any school of just what it was called back in the day, split brandy, split between two different fruits, and then the mountain brandy was grain and fruit. But either or, I like them. But you got to really look at what you're doing. I mean, if you take the corn to a neutral and then infuse it with some other flavors, I think that would be a little bit more conductive with a lot of different fruits. Whereas if you're retaining a lot of corn flavor and having corn flavor with the fruit flavor, I think you would have to kind of work on something that would pair well together, right? Pear. There you go. Pear. That sounds pretty good. Corn and pears. Come on, Chris. Good to see you, brother. I believe you had a little birthday recently, didn't you? I think you and Mr. Palin both had a birthday here recently. Somebody else did too. I can't remember. 355s, 2 controllers. Off and on and off switch. That's interesting. So you just go straight in 120, huh? Is it a 120 or 220? I'd be afraid I'd burn it up. Yeah, they do, especially if you use it for turning on and off. And that's fine as long as you got wire. You know, the main thing is using the right wire and the right type of wire. You know, I made a little post on that earlier. Some of the some of the wiring is really, you got to stay pretty close to the rating. But some of the other wires, you know, you can kind of exceed the rating because of the insulation around them. They, you know, some of it melts pretty easily at certain temperatures, and some are rated for a little higher temp. So that sounds good, brother. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, I posted a little thing on rice the other day. Soju. That's probably the most drank liquor in the world. You know, a lot of people don't realize it, but there's just so many Asians and so many people drinking that soju that it even surpasses bourbons and stuff for the most drank liquor. Beating out even vodkas and stuff. So that's pretty wild. But it's makes sense, you know. I think I posted a little video of somebody making some soju. You still propane, man? Yeah, I'm propane and stove. It depends on the time of year. If I'm outside, it's propane. If I'm inside, like when it's cold right now, I'm definitely stovetop. But my new stove, well, that's not new. The stove I got from my sister's after she passed away. One of her elements and stuff's going out, so I can't hardly do anything on it. I'm so stupid. It's like, man, I can't use this when my front element's out. And of course, there's a left side element, you know, sitting there. And I always thought that the right side one was a higher wattage because that's the way it is on my old stove. And no, so I'm either going to have to replace the element or put my old stove back up there. Yeah, the stainless ones. I think Dernord makes a pretty a good element. A lot of people use. Yeah, Jason makes good boxes. They just came out with some basics. Yeah, sure does. I've seen those advertised. They look nice too. 20-gallon batch. It's just a handful. I mean, I'd say the ball that I throw in there is probably about the size of a softball wrapped up in cheesecloth. And that should do 20, 30 gallons, no problem. You know, a couple handfuls. I've never weighed them out and done it scientifically. I just use about the same amount. Every once in a while, when I'm rinsing them and boiling them, I'll add some more to it. When they get eaten up, they get dissolved over time, and you can keep adding to them and boil them up real good. 4,000 watt, it would. I mean, it's just a time thing when you get to, you know, a lot of people do that. And when you do, make sure you just run it to different branches, right? You have to run the extension cord, I guess. Just make sure it's on different branches of your box, right? And not on the same breaker. But yeah, I think a lot of people do that. Yeah. Yeah. It'll be a little slower, you know, but it's just a time thing. You know, it'll work just fine, good low and slow, but it'll just take a little bit longer, especially on the heat up. But that'll work just fine. A lot of people have to do it. You know, they don't have the ability. A lot of people do it. You know, they'll sit that thing right on their clothes dryer, right, and just plug in behind the clothes dryer and run it right on top of the clothes dryer. I guess you know that mantle will handle the heat, and and some people have it wired to go outside. A lot of people don't want to do the steel inside, and that makes solid sense. You know, the only time I do it's when I'm in the kitchen, but yeah, if you do it inside, make sure you have a fire extinguisher rated for alcohol or that kind of fuel, because it come in handy. Hopefully, you never have to use it, but sometimes you do. So you started out on electric. Ah, that's great. So got Wayne here, knowledgeable. So he's not fond of the electric. I've always been worried about it. You know, that's why I've been hesitant to use it. Um, I'm always worried about the scorching. Now, is it a flavor thing for you, Wayne, or just not convenient, or what? Yeah, rub it in, rub it in. I think Clint's warming up down there. No, I don't think he's talking about the stove. I think he's talking about the using the elements. A little bit behind already. What's going on, GW? Yeah, use T-Mobile. Yeah, they do, and they've gone into the fiber internet. So if you get, I guess I'm gonna have to talk to them. Maybe if I get the fiber internet, I can get my cell phone bill down a little bit. But they've got a thing now going on, and I'm advertising for them, I guess. And if you want to tell them that I sent you, that'll work. But it's called the Fiber Founders. So they're just starting out so early on. This $70 is what this 2 gig internet. It's 2 down, 1 gig up, but I think they're going to move it to 2.2. But it's normally like 95 to 105, depending on what market you're in, where you're at. So you know it's $70 and a 10-year lock. So it's that I like that price lock because the old, even MetroNet, started out, oh, we'll introductory offer $69. And the next thing you know, it's 79, 89, 99. And I guess the time I call them and cuss at them, and it's, I guess they'll give you that price 60 something for a year or 6 months, depending. And then after that, they start raising it every few months. And, we've got a garbage company that does that here too. And it's like, I don't like that. It bothers me. Garbage company keeps, oh, it's adjusting for the fuel cost. I'm like, okay, well, I remember when we had a certain president in office before and the fuel prices went down. I don't remember you ever lowering your rates any, and they didn't, right? So it's just a scam they use. And so yeah, it's but I like that price lock for sure. What's going on, JJ? Good to see you. You did get to the SCR? Awesome, awesome. Yeah, they've got good coverage. They the sale I got now is through Walmart, which I think goes through T-Mobile. So I'm kind of with them already. So I'm going to try to see if I can't combine that bill. But if you do get the founders thing, tell them that I sent you from. Don't say bad Santa; they won't know me. But Joe Justice, you can say, "Oh, Joe Justice and Lexington sent me," and I don't know. There's probably a lot of Joes. If you need more info, if you do decide to go with it, let me know and I can connect you and you can get that founders fiber plan. It's cheap, man. For $70, I'm not sure what a lot of people say. Oh, that's crazy. I'm only paying $29 or $39, but yeah, that's if you're not gaming, and streaming and doing a lot of other things, you don't need as much bandwidth. But once you got, two or three people in the house, you got smart TVs, you got smartphones, and you got, somebody gaming, two people gaming, and gets and she plays her games, I'll play mine, and it starts chewing up the bandwidth, and I can tell when she logs on her games, so it'll definitely help that a little bit. But it's the same price I was paying. Actually, it's about $1 more maybe than what I was paying, so I'm getting twice the bandwidth for $1 more a month, and I'm happy with that. Salmon cowboy beans. That sounds good. Oh, JJ coming down with the flu. I felt bad in December and January. I'm you know, hoping this past couple of weeks been good. So let's hope that trend continues. I wasn't feeling good, man. I think I might have had some kind of stomach virus or something, man. But I do have issues every time I eat. I -11. I did see that. Oh my God. I don't feel so bad now. Hope you're getting feeling better, brother. Yeah, we got in the 20s today here too, JJ. 5 pounds of cornmeal, 5 pounds of sugar, 1 pound of oats. Sounds good to me, brother. I use cornmeal and sugar for a long time, man. It makes good shine. I don't care what anybody says. It's not as good as converting the grains, but it was awful easy to do. It didn't have you know, deal with the enzymes and the conversions and the steeping, and it was just quick and easy. But I will say, once you start doing the grain conversions, and it's a little bit smoother. And I still like using those oats though, and but it's a little bit smoother. It does a little bit. It's a superior product, but it's a lot more involved. It's not as simple. Used to just boil that water up, throw the sugar to it, and melt it down, throw the cornmeal in there, stir it up, and let her cool. Throw the yeast to it, and it's done, right? But we're oats too. But now it's a little different now. There's jar marking Diggers moonshine. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've had to put her in 4-wheel drive a few times. Red that did that video. He's a character, man. He was on the show a few times too, if I'm not mistaken. Old Red was. He's a pretty good fella. I met him at Beattyville and met him a few times since, and we sat and talked and shared a few drinks. A good guy. Yeah, that honey shine's pretty good. Mike made this. He's been at distilling for about a year and a half. He said he's doing good for a year and a half. It's not bad. I like it. Yeah, I understand what you mean, brother. I know. There's been a few times I felt so bad, man. I about crawling up to this computer, and it's like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I can go live tonight or not. December and January, early on January, there's many nights. Oh hell, I forgot to. Clint, you let me forget to send you, because I will say that during the gaming, I had a couple of times that my internet just kind of stopped on me, and I thought that's kind of weird. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, there. I sent you that link in case something goes bad. What's going on, Gary? Good to see you, brother. You made it in here early. All right, all right. 130 is good, pretty good proof for us old drinkers. Yes, sir. We can talk about distilling. Any questions you got, we're here to answer, brother. Yeah, and if you get like natural Alfredo, he does the bamboo shine, and that bamboo is high in glycerols, right? And there's a lot of vegetables and stuff, and that's naturally, that has a lot of glycerol. So if you're getting your glycerin from vegetable glycerols, that's a lot of times why some liquors are smoother than like a sugar, because that a lot of them contain these glycerols, um, and that's why a lot of these different ones will a lot of fruits and vegetables will have a smoother taste than just like a corn. Um, and glycerol, there's a lot in the corn, and I'm reading here now that a lot of the glycerol, the commercial glycerols are produced from the transesterification of corn oil. Transesterification, that's a big ass word, isn't it? But it's esterification of the oils, right? We talk about that all the time. And so a lot of the glycerols are obtained from natural sources. So it's not, a lot of people, feel that you're adding chemicals to it. So it's but it is kind of cheating. But when you're getting them naturally, it's just not cheating. It's utilizing and taking advantage of the compounds within each grain and each plant, vegetable, fruit, whatever. But when Alfredo was just starting and we were going over and trying to figure out why it was so smooth, we figured out that it's very high in glycerols. And we figured out that it glows in the dark because it's got that tyrosine in it, right? And that's what made he found out, man, you put it under a black light, it glows. And I'm like, well, it's probably got tyrosine in it then. That's interesting. So we looked it up, and sure enough, it's got quite a bit of tyrosine in it. Old Alfredo, he's a good feller. Him and Wendy both good people. Hey, no problem, brother. Hey, you're just here to talk and chat, and if people have questions, that's what we're here for. Really, is to answer questions, and sometimes we'll pick a topic and we'll talk about certain things. And I guess we probably should that way. When we don't have a lot of questions, we can kind of at least keep it on topic. And because a lot of people, they don't want to sit here and listen to us him haul about who's going to hit the Super Bowl. Some people care less about that. They're here to talk about distilling, and I get it, brother. So we try to stay on topic as best we can. But I won't let it get political or religious. I draw the line there. I try to keep away from all that. And we Christmas we got rid of all the Mary Jane talk. Everybody wanted to talk about that for some reason around Christmas time. Corn and apple, yeah, I'd say it's a good combo. Yeah, apple and peach, probably the most split brandy. I guess you could do a lot of people do a lot. Apple rye is another one. I guess on are you watching this from the Moonshine Militia on YouTube or Phil Billy on YouTube? If it's Phil Billy's, make sure that you have that notification set on YouTube. YouTube has usually been pretty good, but I don't remember getting the notification on this one. Usually I hear it right after I start, but I didn't get it on this one. Let me see here. I didn't hear it tonight. Right there it is. 801. So yeah, make sure that you're, I got it from both militia and Philby. So make sure that you're on, I guess both, and you'll be sure to get it. But mine, I don't. It says I got it, but it never made the noise. So it might be our phone's doing that. My phone's been acting up a little bit lately. It's a little bit on the old side. Imagine that. Yeah, the man cave, distillery, fishing tackle store, wife's in bed. Don't wake the bear. That's right. That sounds good. 3 20-gallon barrels, airlocked and going. I like it. I like it. I need to get some going too. It's so cold in that utility room. I thought of having to heat it. I could probably about buy the liquor for what it would take to heat it up. In there, it's cold right now. But once temps get up in the 50s and above, I'll get started back again. It's just too damn cold. It's hard for me to. What one good thing about the cold, you got plenty of cold water. You just put that reservoir outside and just recirculate, man. It'll get cold by the time hot water gets back to it. It'll be cold again. Consistency, they do it to make it smoother, for smoothness, to make it a little less hot and a little smoother and easier to drink. And tiptoeing there. 25 gallons, some awesome raspberry wine. Awesome, brother. Love some raspberry wine. Now, did you back sweeten it any? Is it naturally sweet? Did you stop fermentation a little bit early and keep it kind of sweet? That's what I have to do with a lot of my wines, my berry wines, my blackberry and raspberry and blueberry wine. I have to stop it a little early or back sweeten it, kill the yeast off, and then back sweeten it a little bit. Yeah, you got to poke that berry once in a while, don't you? Ring a bell. Here we go. We ain't ring that bell in a while, have we? Did it come out all right? No, I'm all right. They don't want to see my titties. I'll be all right. I'm warming up now. Just make sure you shut that door when you're done. Fallout 1. Good game. I like. They've got a new one coming out, don't they? Or it might have just come out. Oh, hell. Yeah, Fallout 4. February 24th. So, yeah, later this month. I was thinking it was sooner than that, but yeah. Is that anniversary edition? Well, that's for Switch, though. Is that just on Switch? Oh, so it came out in 2025. Okay, that's what I was thinking, man, that doesn't sound right. So they're putting it on Switch. And Fallout 4 did come out this past year. And I guess 2030 for Fallout 5. So it'll be a while. I have to wait 4 years on that. So 2025 Fallout. I was thinking I hadn't played it, but I knew it was. When did it come out? Yeah, I'm ready. It's one of those who cares games. I'd rather see Seattle win. I've seen Patriots win so many. I'd like to see somebody else win. Yeah, when you hit that bell on YouTube, hit that bell. We'll do a shot. Yeah, you definitely for amylase for your potato shine. Yeah. Now your potatoes will gelatinize quicker than corn will, so it doesn't take as long. But like I was saying, 45 minutes to cook the corn, and it'll fully gelatinize. It'll gelatinize a little sooner, but it's got resistant starches in it. And if you want to get rid of all those resistant starches, you got to cook them down. And when you cook it for 45 minutes at 185, 90 steep or cook steep, preferably, um, then you'll be good to go. And then add your high temp and wait for the glucose and add it whatever the label says later. Yep, just like any other. A lot of people don't realize that. I was talking to some people that make a lot of potato shine, and I guess they just been using potatoes and sugar, which is fine. There's a lot of people do that. Nothing wrong with it. But I'm like, yeah, you can probably cut back on your sugar a little bit if you use amylase. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, you can convert those starches just like any starches. It's not just for corn and grains, and unmalted grains. It's for any starch out there, whether it's tapioca or sweet potatoes, regular potatoes, uh, yeah, add that amylase in there and break those starches up and use them. And then that way you can add less sugar and get a little bit smoother vodka. Not much, Richard. What's going on, brother? I believe you had a birthday here recently too, didn't you? I know it's tough on the reading it off the screen there. A lot of you have to see the YouTubers' comments on the screen, and that's as big as they let us make it. GW, I know. That's it's just tall. We can do tall or wide. I guess it's a little. I don't know which is better for y'all reading it that way or that way. I like wide a little better. Yeah, it's tough reading it. That's one of my things. I asked for a long time for them to be able to make it where we could see all the chat in the chat, but that's not coming. That's not working out real well. But they did add this for cross platform, so they call it cross platform. So anytime you're on Facebook, you can see YouTube comments, and people on YouTube can see the Facebook comments. Because used to you couldn't see either, right? So they added this, but they've yet to make our little box bigger. So I'm working on them. I'm going to every trust me. After every show, I keep getting on to them. Let's make this box bigger. I want it to be just as big as the box that my face is in. Or my pictures in. Here, let me adjust that a little bit. So uh, people be able to read it a little easier. But I'm happy that they got it to this point. They did listen and they did add this. And as soon as they did, I complained about something else. They're probably like, oh, you can't make that some bitch happy. But yeah, bigger box. If you're listening to StreamYard, bigger box. Make it go twice as tall as that. And keep that same width and just make it go almost up to underneath where it says live or something. That'd be, I like my picture. We want it bigger. Yeah, somebody was asking me too. They were thinking about using instead of just regular sugar with their potatoes. They were asking me how many pounds, right, Frank? And so you can use whatever pounds that you want, right? You can make your own recipe. That's why we have a hydrometer. So we can use whatever pounds we have and whatever, you know, more of course that you use, the more flavor you're going to retain, just like fruits. But if it gets pretty tight, and of course, there gets to a point where it's going to be hard to clear, right? You just got a lot of potato there and a lot of liquid with it. Um, yeah, it's going to be a little tougher to separate. So Um, but yeah, you add sugar until your hydrometer, so if you just don't have enough and you want to use about 4 pounds of potatoes per gallon, then use 4 pounds per gallon, convert what you got, what you can. I would recommend probably doing it 4 pounds per half gallon. And then after you convert, you can add your hot water and sugar right together, melt you some sugar down in some hot water and add that to it and use your hydrometer and kind of get it to where you want it. 1070, 1080, or 60, 70, 80. I like 70. That's pretty good all around number to hit. Oh, on YouTube, when you look at YouTube, there'll be a when you look underneath the picture. Yeah, I know, and I thought they were talking about me drinking hitting the drink thing. But if you look underneath the picture there, thumbs down to share, ask, save, and somewhere on here, um, not on here, but on some of these there'll be like a little. Let me see what. I guess it helps you open up something other than them. If you hit those little three dots, I don't even see subscribe here, so on these. And let me find one. Let me mute that so I don't have to hear it. But a lot of them you can subscribe to individual pages. Let me try to find an individual. Let me go to Philbilly's page, in fact. So when you go to somebody's page, like Philbilly Moonshine, and you're on their page, you can see where it's got a little bell, and right underneath the name, it's got a little bell that says subscribe, and it's got a little down thing you can subscribe and unsubscribe, and you can have it where you can get notifications or not. So that's the bell they're talking about, and so when you go to the main root page, I guess when you open up the Distiller thing, you don't see that. But when you go to Philbilly's page, you'll see that bell. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, at the very bottom left where it says Distilling 101 and Distillers Chat Q&A, and it says Philbilly Moonshine, and you see a little bell right next to it. Hit that bell and subscribe, and you'll be able to get notifications every time we have a show, and every time Philbilly does something, it'll send you a little ding. It'll just go ding on your phone, and it'll send you a little message that we got a live going, or he's got something going on. One of his recipes that he does a lot of different recipes and stuff. Yeah, I know. Hey, until somebody tells you, I didn't know either. So I had no idea. But since I've been doing the gaming thing and watching streamers right on different platforms, they say, yeah, hit that like and subscribe, hit that bell, and I'm like, oh, what? And then I asked, I had to ask too. Like, man, I'm old. I'm clueless. What the hell? What bell? How do I hit the bell? I want to. I didn't hear it ring when I hit it, and they're like, no, there. And I'm, oh, okay. So that's how you like, subscribe, and that's how you subscribe by clicking on that little bell. That makes sense. But it's a handy little tool to let you reminder because I can't remember anything. I'm get so busy and absent-minded now that I'm getting old. I need that little bell. I need that bell about 10 minutes before my show starts, so I can wake up and man, you should see me moving at 7:53 this evening. Man, I was off that couch like a cat, scalded cat. 240. Yeah, if you can do the 240, that's the way to go for sure. Mine's 240. I plan on probably doing it inside there on my dryer. It's something else you plug into your stovetop, right? You just set your steel right on the stove and just plug into the back of the stove. And instead of using the stove to heat it, you can use the element and on the stove, right? I know. kind of, but be kind of easy. But it does heat up pretty quickly, and I eventually I probably outside where my heat pump is, my compressor and everything outside. There's a little box out there, and I got pull, so we got a little heater box and that box and pull under the water lights and a lot of that stuff that goes in the pump and everything. So there's a little breaker box out there that I'll probably increase the size of and go ahead and put in a 200 amp there and pull some new wire to it, and that, or maybe in the garage. I don't know. I'm definitely going to do it in the garage because I got a welder and stuff that I want to connect, and a little plasma cutter that I want to connect in there. So I'll definitely be running me a breaker in there this spring. 50-50, all-purpose flour bread flour, extra virgin olive oil in the mix. Oh, that sounds good. At first, I was like, wait a minute, this is mash? Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Definitely have to get on and making the pizza dough. You heard that? That's always a good thing, unless you're a Duke fan. But here in Kentucky, we like the sound of that because we're not Duke fans here either. That rivalry goes back a long way, man. I remember the game it happened to, and it's never Christian Laettner, I guess, back to his days. It's never gotten better since, man. But yeah, glad to see Tar Heels beating the old Dukage. Yeah, a lot of people do that. They'll use two elements at once, and then once you get it to the desired temp around 198, 96, 98, something like that, you can cut it back and just use that one element to maintain that temperature. What's going on, propane? Corn apple shine. Do it in the fermentation. So I guess you could either way. Really, I guess you could make the brandy must and the corn mash and separately, and then right before you run them, just rack them off and go into the distiller. But I see what you're thinking. It's I don't think it's as much. You can still infuse. I mean, there's no rules, brother. There's nothing, no TTB standing over us telling that's how we got to do things, right? To keep it labeled a certain way. So, we got freedom of expression. We can do everything any way we want to. And that's the beauty of it, man. It's just being able to experiment and try so many different combinations and see just how they turn out. You never know till you try it. But yeah, you can infuse that way as well. Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people do the ferment that way. They'll just take corn mash and then an apple, must and then rack them off and then combine them right before they do them. But I'd say most people do them in the same mash barrel, but there's nothing that says you have to, right? You can do your corn differently because it's going to take, actually, it'd probably be best to do it in separate fermenters, and I'll tell you why. So with the corn, you're going to be using amylase to help break, the starches out and break those down and using those. But in your apples, you're going to be using pectic enzymes, right? And to help separate the juice, right? And it's going to have a little cellulose in it, or cellulase in it that'll break down cellulose. So it's probably not good to have that, or with the corn, because it's going to break down a lot of that corn cells too, and we don't need to do that. And we might add a little bit to the heads with that cellulase in there. That's enzyme that breaks down cellulose and cell walls. So it's in most pectic enzymes. We talked about that. I think Wayne and Amanda touched on that a little bit. They wasn't sure why it would create more heads. And two, I think it's also because of the actual thing that you're fermenting, creates more heads. And but I think where the pectic enzymes, a lot of people don't realize the pectic enzymes commercially have cellulase in there, and it's used in making fruit and fruit juices and jellies, and it helps break out that helps break out all the juice out of the fruit, right? So it busts up a lot of those cell walls, and that cellulase does, and it's mixed with the pectinase, and and it's probably be best to do it in separate fermenters, and just when you rack it off, just put it in your boiler, in equal proportions, or I guess you could do, 20% corn and or half this, half the other, or a little higher percentage of one than the other if you wanted that dominant flavor. No rules, bro. Oranges and grapefruits. Heck yeah, man. Little prison wine, little prison hooch. And a lot of times, if you can get an area where you could freeze it, you could up that proof quite a bit. Not many prisons would let you get that damn cold, though. I hope. But if you could set it in a bucket outside, and you had somebody working in the kitchen or something, they could set it outside and let it freeze, and throw that ice out and save that wine. Definitely would. 8 2-wire, that'd be good. I think 8, let's see, 10 is good to 30 amps. So that's for 40. Yeah, that'd be fine. I hope you get feeling better, brother. I know the feeling, man. Awesome, brother. All right, let's see, 8:43. Damn, I'm way behind. How did I get so far behind? You out here, GW? I'm sorry, brother. I'm getting behind. Later, brother. Be careful. I got behind. Big 5-0. Says a while back for me. Getting old. Kim Hayes. I cut it down to 80. Current proof is 100, 110. I just cut it down a third. So whatever volume you have, add a third more water, and that should get you to about 70 or below 80 for sure. You could do half and half. There's no rules. As long as it's below 80, uh, you could do half and half and get it to 50 proof. It's still a lot higher proof than what we would normally go in as a mash. So you'll be fine. Comcastic, that's good. Hey, it's hit and miss. I mean, every one of them's good and bad. It just depends on where you are. I've heard people moan and groan about their Comcast and it's horrible, and other people, man, ours is great. It never goes out, get great speed. So it's just like McDonald's or Wendy's or Burger King. They vary depending on where you at. Different ones for different places. You got fiber optic? Yeah, me too, brother. That's the way to go. As soon as they offered that here, I jumped on it, but just for my gaming. But I did get my gaming rig going. My issue was the RAM, which I didn't know stayed lit all the time. Interesting. But the RAM I got was incompatible. It was cheap, so that's why I got it, and found out it wasn't compatible with my motherboard. So I had to send it in. And boy, I'm glad I did, because I only had like 4 days left when I did that. I was thinking about it. It's Friday, and I was thinking about putting it off till Monday to, I'll just take care of that Monday. And I'm like, man, I sent it in, and they had me new RAM here. This outfit out of California, they had me new RAM in 26 hours. I ordered that RAM, and 26 hours later, it was at my door. That's pretty impressive. Yeah, it was like noon when I ordered it, and got an RMA from the other one. It's I go this bought a lot of stuff at Newegg. I do Newegg, Tiger Direct, Amazon, Walmart, just whoever has the cheapest price. So I kind of Frankenstein this together from a lot of different places and put together a pretty good little system for the money. People are like, wow, you got all that for that? And it's, I got a lot of deals during Christmas time and Black Friday deals and stuff. So, but I didn't get my case in Power Supply till recently, so I wasn't able to put it all together. Boy, I'm glad it's been another week. I've been screwed, man. I've been eating that memory. That's expensive these days, man. That DDR5 memory is very, very expensive. It's gone up so much. I'm thinking about investing in some RAM companies because they're making so much money right now, man. The demand has gone so high. They've jacked the prices 4 times higher than normal. And I read where I was wanting to buy American made, right? So I read into it. Micron, one of the few American RAM makers. There's a few others. They're not that big and they're not that well known and probably don't have compatible RAM for mine. But Micron, which also makes Crucial, they stopped making consumer RAM, and they're gearing up just to fill these data centers, and that's what's causing all these prices to go up. These AI data centers that they're putting in everywhere. So if you're an investor, I'd definitely look into Micron and a few companies like that, because next few years they're going to be making big bucks. They're going to show some really good profits. V8 fermentation. Yeah, I wouldn't. I would never throw anything out unless it, unless it gets some bad bacteria, right? Some toxin. I had somebody earlier this week ask me they had some corn, some old sour mash sitting out, and they left the grain. It was in a sealed container, but they went back and had white stuff all over it. Generally, when in doubt, throw it out, right? It's not worth getting sick over. It's just a $20 mash, right? That's not that much corn in there, and it's spent pretty much as when you're doing it as a sour mashing anyway. So you got most of your use out of that corn. So when in doubt, just throw it out. But there is a thing called KAHM yeast, KAHM yeast. And you see that a lot when you ferment foods. And when you talked about fermenting that for bread and pizza and stuff, kind of made me think about it, because a lot of people do a lot of food fermentations. A lot of foods are really good fermented. And KAHM yeast comes into play a lot in the food fermentation, and that's not a good thing, right? It's not good. It's a wild yeast, and it's not going to add good flavor for you. It won't ruin your fermentation. It won't ruin your sour mash, but identifying it and making sure that's exactly what it is, and not some kind of powder mold or some kind of toxic mold. Or usually your toxic molds though will have a color. And if it starts getting like fuzzy and furry, like cotton balls or something, that's one thing. Powdery, mold is a different thing. But a lot of times that KAHM yeast will be powdery and on the surface, and it won't be, we also considered a lacto, infection. It could be maybe some lacto, but I figured it's probably that KAHM yeast overtaking it. Anytime you do that, if you do, it's going to be time to pour the hot back set with your sugar. Just pour that over it. Yes, you're going to kill the good yeast in there, but you can kill all that KAHM off. And then when it starts, all going to the surface, you can just skim all that, white off on the surface, eliminate as much as you can of it, and keep going with it. And that hot acidic back set, if it's above 160, will kill most of that yeast off, that wild KAHM yeast. But that a lot of times that's what that is. But like I said, when in doubt, it's best just to go ahead and just pitch it and start back. especially if you start getting colors, colorful things in there. Yeah, get a little red, get a little green, some different colors in there. Yeah, probably a good time. Good, like I did that jelly and jam mash that I did. Oh my god, I'll never forget that. Just opening that lid, I can just feel the spores in my nose right now. When I breathed in and I did that and took a big whiff to see if it smelled good, it was like, ugh, it's horrible, man. I wonder how many coons I killed with that shit out in the woods. I dumped that stuff, and I don't dump often, but if I scorch it or mold and bacteria takes over, it's time to go. Better to be safe than sorry. We don't deal with the large, huge volumes. We're not like some commercial distillery running tens of thousands of gallons. Then it's a big concern. You got $5,000 in that mash. Then it makes a little difference, right? Than the $10 we got in it. The 25 pounds of corn or whatever. So or a 50-pound bag of corn. So yeah, it's a little different. Straight Talk does. I think that Walmart. Yeah, yeah. That's it. I've had real good luck with it in Eastern Kentucky, where I'm from. The last carrier, I can't remember who my last carrier was, but yeah, it wasn't good in East Kentucky. On the Mountain Parkway on the way home, it cut off and it wasn't cut back on. I wouldn't get service till I got back home. But yeah, it's I'm doing good there in East Kentucky now with the Walmart. I think it's family plan that I got. Yeah, it's good price, $30 some a month for unlimited. Kind of hard to beat. How far do I run my tails down? I run them down to about 10%, which is about 20 proof, and after that, around 4%, it doesn't get 8 proof, it doesn't get any better, because of the azeotrope. It'll come off at this, it'll get down to 8 proof. I think it's about 4%, 8 proof. Once it gets to that point, it just boils off with the water all the way down. It'll never change. So you never get rid of all the alcohol until you get rid of all the water, because all the water will have a little bit of that alcohol bonded with it all the way down to where it's dry because of its azeotrope. So around 4% that happens, 8 proof. So 10%, 20 proof. That's a pretty good time to cut it. It's not going to change a lot, and it depends. If I'm doing it outside on propane, I tend to cut it off a lot sooner than I do if it's on the stove. So because there's a cost benefit, mark there, and the cost and benefit kind of is reduced as you're using the expensive propane. So because it's a lot of extra time, and I also crank up the heat too. When I strip the tails off. So I knew what you meant. Yeah, I guess, man, you got a headset on. Hey, babe, is Family Talk, Straight Talk use the same courier? Yeah. Okay. Thinking they don't. Do not. Yeah, my Family Mobile does T-Mobile. That's what I'm on. Family Mobile. Straight Talk uses Verizon. Okay. And that's what I used to. There it is. That's why I used to have the Straight Talk, and I couldn't get coverage in Eastern Kentucky when I did the Straight Talk because the Verizon wasn't around Kentucky. But when I switched to Family Mobile, I did because it's on the T-Mobile plan, so it gets better coverage in Eastern Kentucky. I'm glad you said that because I couldn't think of who it was, but yeah. I used to do Straight Talk, and it's cheap. I'm seeing right now $25 per line, but I think you have to have two lines. Yeah. But yeah, mine's 30 some a month, and it's a good deal. And it's on the T-Mobile. Oh, have liftoff. We know what that means. Time for a drink, right? Yeah, we haven't been ringing the bell in a long time. We used to do that all the time. Hey, it's a good way for beginners to get their feet wet, and it's a good way for old moonshiners to get their throat wet, man, because I'll still break down and do a sugar shine. I ain't too proud of a minute. I'll do one every once in a while if I ain't got nothing better going on and no fruits on sale, and I'm too hungry to get the grain and convert it. I'll make a little rum, a little hillbilly rum with some white sugar. Hillbilly rum, man. That's what we call it. Not sugar shine. It's hillbilly rum. We don't use that brown sugar. We got that white sugar. Mountain rum. Sprint. Yes, sir. I sure have. I don't put it in like before, but I put it in the infusion chamber, and it does pretty well. Or you could just put it in the jar afterwards. As nobody cares these days, right? If it's got a little color, it's all right. I've done some good taste and shine by putting some Jolly Rancher in there. That green apple's good. The watermelon's good. A lot better than my a lot better than my watermelon. That's for damn sure. But yeah, you can put the Jolly Ranchers in there, just dissolve them out, and works great. Has a little color to it, a little sweetness, but you can put it right on 100, 120 proof, and shit, add some flavor to that, makes it good. That green apple is good stuff too. It is post flavor. Yeah, it makes good post flavor. Yeah. And you run it through, you get some floaties in there, and you run it through a coffee filter and take them out if it bothers you. I just drink it. I don't care. But if I'm gonna give it to somebody or something, I'll run it through a coffee filter. Lord, I'm way behind. I'm gonna have to. Yeah, and when you do ask questions, we got a lot of people that listen in the background, and a lot of people don't want to chime in. They want to kind of stay anonymous. They're anonymous listeners, and they want to remain that way. And I respect that and understand. So a lot of the questions that we ask and that you all ask are maybe some questions that they wanted. They've always wondered about. So definitely ask the questions. There's no question too simple. There's no stupid question here. You won't ever hear anybody saying, that's the dumbest question ever, or go Google that, or anything like that. We'll find the answer if we don't know it. We'll try to find the answer for you. And work through and try to figure it out. So definitely ask your questions. That's what this whole show's about. It's isn't about me getting up here and running my mouth. It's about the questions and us answering your questions and telling you why and trying to explain, on a normal terminology why, without trying to, lacquer it down with a bunch of scientific mumbo jumbo that a lot of people can't understand. And, I think a lot of people use a lot of that scientific talk just to impress people when you can explain it on a lot simpler ways. There's a lot of easier ways to explain a lot of that stuff that, you know, ain't no crazy question. If you have any curiosities, I know that a lot of you are just, in the thinking about it stage, and wondering if it's going to be worth it. And, I can definitely tell you, Mike has been doing this for a year and a half, and this is a perfectly good little honey shine he made. Is it the best I've ever drank? No, but for somebody that's just been at it a year and a half, it's pretty damn good. And it's it's not that hard to do, and it's not that hard to get good results at it. There's a few guidelines that you should try to follow if you can. But like we say, there's no rules. You can get outside the guidelines. Like when we were talking with Alan, talking about stress and yeast and stuff. I don't. Again, I don't. Want us, most of us, to try that. We're not at that point yet. But once you get to consistency where you can slightly deviate from your norm and taste the difference, then you can kind of experiment a little bit by stressing things and pushing it and looking for a little bit different results and getting a little bit different esters and floral notes and things of that nature, like using your, yeast at a higher temperature than they would normally like, right? Not saying do that, because most people do that. They'll get a stuck fermentation. They'll kill their yeast off and they'll be like, why is my fermentation stuck? And, but a lot of times, you really need to develop the consistency before you start experimenting like that. But I'm not going to discourage anybody from it. That's the beauty of it, man. There's no set rules set in stone. There's a few things that are definitely better if you do it a certain way than the others. And then when I say better, it's more of a factual thing than just an opinion thing. But fortunately for this, most of the rules are just an opinion, and you can vary. And there's no set in stone right and wrong way, except for a few things, right? So we know we don't want to denature enzymes, or we don't want to kill our yeast off, by exceeding certain limits. That's when it becomes factual. You kill all the yeast off. I can tell you without a doubt, you're not going to get a good fermentation if all your yeast is dead, right? You're not going to get a good conversion if you denature enzymes. So, there's certain things that you don't want to do. Yeah, yeah. And if we can't answer it, man, I'm not too proud. I'll get on that Google and I'll search your answer for you. I don't know it all. I don't profess to, and neither does Clint. We've both been doing this for ages, and you'll never know it all. But there's a lot of people out there that profess to, and we ain't them. So we're here to help people and not try to impress people, and that's why we're here. We're here to answer your questions, try to help you, and help you along in the hobby and make it more enjoyable hobby for you, right? So if we don't know the answers, we'll look them up. Then we're all learning together, right? And I may forget it by next week, at my age. Yeah, it is. It is. I'm, not gonna get political, but and not just the weather, and the political climate. There's a lot of different climates that we got to deal with these days, but yeah, it's always good to stockpile on everything that you do, whether it's food, keeping plenty of beans and keeping plenty of things that keep for a long time. And, a lot of your stuff will, try to, find what's perishable and what keeps for a long time, and kind of stock up on the long-term stuff, because you just never know, I've experienced some floods and some ice storms and some, issues, with power outages and things of that nature. And I've seen store shelves go bare, and trucks not able to get in to replenish them, right? And you go to the store and it's like, well, what do you mean you don't have any biscuit mix? Well, sorry, you have to make your own biscuits. I mean, hell, Kroger's out of biscuits. First time I ever seen them out of biscuits. I don't know. I guess during that ice storm, everybody went and fucking bought biscuits. Like, man, I can't even buy my biscuit mix, man. It's just all gone. I mean, every fucking roll of every variety that they had was gone off the shelf. And it's like, man, I guess everybody in this subdivision is eating biscuits today, because it's like, I understand the bread and eggs, butter kind of thing. But man, biscuits. You got my damn biscuits, man. I was on charging the pot. How much mash volume is ideal? 60% of pot volume. I'd go about 75 to 80, Elvin. Good question. You just don't want it to boil over, right? And there's certain things, you can put a little butter in there or a little vegetable oil in there. Not a lot, no change the flavor, but just enough to break your surface tension down. It's like you can't even boil water without it foaming up, right? If you've ever made boiled eggs, you've seen it. It just starts foaming up, just pure water, right? So when you boil your eggs, if you can put vinegar in there to help break it down. I wouldn't recommend that in the mash though, but you can put a little butter in there or a little vegetable oil. That'll do the same thing. It'll help keep it from boiling up and being real foamy and puking over. So good question. You can put a little bit of butter in there or just go about 75, 80. So if you got a 15 gallon, I go 12 and a half, 13. Some people, oh, you can go 14. Sure you can if you go slow, but I rip through that shit, man. I ain't got time. So yeah, leave you plenty of room. And it also depends. If you're running a flat top, type bever with the pot with the flat top on it, you're going to have to leave you a little more. But if you got one of those caps that kind of angle up, like a cape has a cape on it, if you have the still with a cape, you can tend to run a little bit more because that cape helps with that boiling as part of the design feature is to help cool the foam, and that's why I'm kind of designed that way. So good question. What is ideal to run your chiller at? Now, when you mean chiller, I'm assuming that you're talking about the condensation water, right, in your flake and the where you have your worm in. Um, you don't really look at the temperature of that as much as the temperature of your distillate coming off. So whatever temperature that is required to keep your alcohol as it drips off or drizzles off, between 65 and 75 degrees, which is optimal. Um, we realize that it's not so easy to keep it at that. If it varies from that, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. It's not going to ruin anything. It's just better if it comes off 65 to 75 because talked about last week and the oils and the molecular structure and how they start saponifying and thickening as it gets cooler and start coming out of the solution a little easier when it gets cooler. So you don't want to get it too cold, and then again too hot. You get some more volatiles. Kind of, it's not a horrible thing, but so whatever temp is necessary to keep your distillate between 65 and 75. So if you're coming off and it's 80, you need to keep it a little bit cooler. A lot of people drop a 2-liter jug of ice or a gallon jug of ice down in there if it's large enough in your reservoir to do that. That's what I do. So that'll help keep it cool. And if you need to keep it a little cooler, you can always add another jug. And if it's too cold, you can take that jug back out, right? And kind of regulate it that way. Good question. Got 120-volt element. Awesome. It'll be slower than a turkey burner. It's 2000. It'll do about like a burner on a stove. It's going to be dependent on the size of your pot. The larger your pot, the longer it's going to take to heat up. So, if some people, as long as you can keep the wires out of the way, I've heard people using, a little gas element to help heat it up, right? They started out on the gas and get it hot, and then they turn on the element, and after it gets preheated with the gas, they'll use the element to finish it on out. That way they save on propane and get the benefit of the quicker heat times. Makes sense, but be careful because you got all that heat coming up around the pot and up. So, watch, make sure that you can keep everything out of the way. I'm assuming that they've never had any problem. I think they might have put something, up between the burner and that to kind of deflect the heat away from coming up directly to that, because it comes up the side of the pot, and I think they may have laid a brick next to it or something. I don't know, but I think that's what they did. Laid a couple bricks there or something to keep the heat from hitting the joint where the wire goes into the element. But yeah, they used both and seemed to have a pretty good solution. But again, anytime you experiment like that, just be careful it'll work though. Yeah, and there's certain things, like Clint said, there's certain things. Good point. Some will foam more than others. So again, that little butter on the top will help for some of those more foamy things. But they also make a drops, a formula that you can put in there to help break down the foam. And a lot of people degas, if it's like a wine or brandy, an apple or something like that, you can degas to help cut back on some of your foaming, if you want to go the time to do that. Spaceballs inspired liquor. Spaceballs the whiskey. I remember that movie. I don't know, man. That's an interesting question. That was a funny movie. Trying to see what AI says. I'm really curious to see. Okay. They do have a bourbon that's aged in space. It'll be aged 3 years on the ground and then 1 year in space. That's some crazy shit. I've never heard of that, man. That's wild, isn't it? Think about that. What are they just going to send it up on to the International Space Station, or maybe we could, maybe NASA can hire me and I can make some do some experimenting on the space station fermentation. We can all sit up here and drink vodka with the Russians up there, the Ruskies. Shredding the taters. Yeah, that worked. Now you cooking yours down, Richard, and you using the amylase on them or just with the sugar? Because a lot of people do them both ways. There's no right or wrong, but you can use your amylase on it just like you would a corn. We were talking about that. I was talking about one of my friends was asking me about that earlier today on the phone. They're probably listening. Yeah, they put a steam whistle. He has steam. He uses a lot of steam in his processes, and some of the steels are steam jacketed. And we talked about in years past about when I moved into this house, there was a steam whistle, and I was talking about, I wish I had a steam genie or something to blow that whistle to, and you can do it on your steel. If your steel's building up a lot of steam and pressure, like some of those big ones do, you can actually blow off some heads through the whistle. But they've got steam generated, and he's got well, I think Wayne made him a whistle to put on there, and they blow the whistle off there in the shop. 60 would not be too cool for the water going in there. But again, it would you want your distillate to be between 65 and 75. So 60 is definitely not going to be too cold because it's going to, your distillate's going to be warmer than the water around it, right? Cooling it and condensing it. So 60 may not be cool enough, depending on how much and how large. Then so the temperature is going to vary based on the type of setup that you've got. Now, if you've got a Liebig, 60 may be fine. It's constant 60 going through there may be fine enough to keep, or a shotgun condenser. But in a bigger container, that temperature would probably be more conducive because you've got such a large volume of that water, and it has a lot more time to go through the coils instead of through that short tube like a Liebig or a shotgun. So it's going to be less critical and a lot easier to adjust and keep in control in a large flake, what we call a flake stand. So your cooling barrel that your cold worm, if you have a worm, if you have a pretty large volume of water, it's going to be a lot easier to regulate that and get a good consistent distillate temperature. And attenuation is what a lot of distillers call it, attenuation. What's going on, Archie? Good to see you, brother. Muddling. You gonna muddle that corn? There's that autocorrect. They talking about malting. What's going on, Archie? Yeah. Yeah. Now, if you have like a Liebig, 60 degrees may not be cold enough, or a short shotgun, 60 may not be enough. If you've got a big, huge, flake, 60, constant 60 may be fine, but because by the time it gets out the bottom, it may have time to cool the distillate down to the 65, 75 that you want. So again, it's going to vary, depending on what type of condenser that you're using, and also if you're using a worm or a shotgun, the length of it, right? So the longer it is, the more forgiving it's going to be, just like the more water you have in your flake stand, the more forgiving it's going to be. So it's definitely going to be based on that, and it will vary. Yeah, I definitely, there was that question posted in another show or in one of the groups. I can't remember. I heard it somewhere recently. But if you're distilling, it's different than beer making. A lot of beer makers will be like, oh, no, definitely off the grain, And I can understand that because you're drinking, that's your final product. That mash is your final product. So clarification and clearing and getting that good clear it just makes sense, and the proteins and everything. Once you learn all that, so our beer makers are generally make good whiskey makers because they have that experience and knowledge that they can bring forward. But I will say, um, that's one of the things that they need to change as far as flavor goes is fermenting on the grain instead of off. You definitely get a lot more flavor and a lot more flavor impact, and those proteins and that protein haze isn't a problem anymore because we don't care if it's milky or hazy because we're not drinking the mash, right? So we're distilling it, so it's not as big an issue in flavor. Becomes more of an issue, and establishing some fats and proteins and certain things that we will want to carry forward for the rustification and the aging process. So it's a little bit different. Other than hops, if you had a hopless beer, it definitely wouldn't necessarily make the best whiskey. It'd probably lack a lot of character because it doesn't have a lot of those flavors and things carrying forward with it. But for beer, it's definitely the way to go. If you want a good clear, you know, beer with not a lot of protein hazes and off flavors and stuff that would be better if it was distilled. So it's a big difference when it comes to that. And I don't know, I don't do beer makers use a lot of amylase in their beers, or is it mostly just malts that they're using to extract? Is there a lot of? I'm not a big beer maker. I never really. I've always made beer to distill, right? I've never been a beer drinker, so I never made a lot of beers. So, do they use a lot of amylase in the beer making process like they do in distilling? I don't know. Yeah, it's good. Good analogy. And then we got washes, so like your rums, your tequilas, your sugars, those are called washes. So we got mush, mash, and musts and washes. And then beer drinkers, beer call it wort, but that's because I guess that means it's grainless, right? You're fermenting off the grain, so it would be a little bit different. It's kind of in between a mash and a wash, so it should be called a morsh instead of a wort. But yeah, they call it a wort. I don't know. I'm pretty well known for anybody that camps around me at these festivals. Like, damn, man, you don't want to camp close to Bad Santa. He's a snoring fool. Yeah, I snore pretty loud, man. So I've got a reputation for it. That's funny. Sounds good. Sounds real good. Yeah, I've used triticale and birdseed. I used to make what I call a birdseed bourbon. I get all that different birdseed and stuff and mill it up with some corn and it does well. It's adds some character and some different flavors to it. You get bored doing the same shit all the time, man. I did cornmeal and sugar thin mash for so long. That's why I started getting so into brandies and making wines and stuff. It's just something different, something I could, finally learn more about. And because I've done, grain and cornmeal and grains and stuff like that for so long, it's like, but I do need to get back and do some grain. He's a little bit late. Scott's been out swarping on Saturday. He came home early, so he wouldn't get DUI. Yep. That's all right. We know where your priorities are. At that time, 10 o'clock. And it goes by. Time flies, don't it? Tell him drink a little more. It's Saturday, right? Try not to drink too much on Tuesdays. Now I got a question for you. No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't bother. Just clean it out real good, and I would get you some old heads, and put them on a cloth, and really put a lot of pressure in wiping down that stainless on the inside. You'd be surprised how much buffing compounds and greases, manufacturing greases, you'll pull off that just a regular Dawn and Dawn dish soap and water won't take off. Because I cleaned mine with Viver that I got in. Uh, I cleaned it with Dawn dish soap and cleaned it, and I just out of curiosity, I'm like, let's see how much. So I got some heads and put on a rag and started going to town. I mean, I'm putting some pretty good, not enough to bend it, right, but some pretty good elbow grease on it. Quite a bit of polishing compounds came off that stuff. So, but definitely do a run with just, even with just water. That way you test for leaks. And a lot of times that heat will loosen up a lot of those manufacturing greases, even though it might not cut it. It will heat them up and loosen them up, and you'll be able to get some of those out. And if there's any copper involved at all, that I would definitely do the vinegar. But just an all stainless, I would tend to run either a sacrificial alcohol run even before I would a vinegar, because that alcohol will cut a lot of that grease and cut a lot of that buffing compounds out too. Yeah, yeah, it's not good, and it's tough for It's like I was telling the person who was talking about that. In canning, a lot of times you'll see them put weights when they ferment. A lot of different vegetables and stuff. You'll see them put weights to keep all the vegetables and everything below the surface of the water. You don't want it coming in contact with the air, and that's why they put those weights on it to keep that calm yeast from developing on them. Oh, Miss Tammy, how are you this evening? I'm behind as usual, trying to get caught up here. Yeah, I'd say there's some starches in acorns you can convert. Not quite sure how it tastes. Yeah, I was getting ready to say the tannins, the tannic acids for sure. Yeah, those tannins would probably be a deal killer. It'd probably be pretty damn bitter. Yeah, so boiling them, I know when they eat them, you have to boil them multiple times, right? So just to get that bitterness out of them, I'd say it'd be bad. Yeah, we're gonna definitely work on getting this chat box in enlarged. If I can get into the coding, I might be able to do it myself. Nah, listen to Clint trying to play himself down there. Clint's very knowledgeable. We both learn from each other. Yeah, that's that's one thing I love about this show is we all learning. Every week, every episode, we all learn something that we didn't know before, right? I just did the biscuits. God, I'm that far behind. Oh Lord, I am. And I don't want to scroll past everybody though to get caught up. That's what I run into. I don't want to scroll past everything. Yeah, temperature. Check the temp. Definitely got nutrients in there though. If it's like second or third, first gen sour mash, okay. Um, it definitely should have plenty of nutrients though, but it's most likely temperature, pH 1. So you've taken care of both of those. You've added more yeast. So just check your temps and be prepared in the wintertime. I every late fall to early spring, every year for the last, 5, 7 years since I've been doing this, um, every year, without a doubt, people start running into stalling issues. And they've run it from spring and summer and fall, they've gotten used to it. And then all of a sudden, everything that they ever did before doesn't work anymore. And it's like, I'm doing this just the same way I always did, when it's not doing it. What have I done wrong? I'm doing it the same way. And it's nothing that you did wrong. It's just that a lot of times it's the temperature. But I keep the room warm. Okay, how warm is the floor? Well, now that's probably pretty cold. And if you don't put something between your fermenter and that floor, a lot of times that floor coldness will perm right through it, and it'll help keep it cold. So, putting a little foam, foam that foam they use in the walls, or, I'm talking about the square sheet stuff that they use in foundation foam, and putting that between the floor, even just blanket folded up a few times, just anything to help insulate it, keep it off the floor will help go a long way. I do about a 30%, some pay 50%. I'd probably, run a gallon for every 2 gallons. It'd be 50%, you know. I'd probably get away with a gallon for every three, 30%. It just helps. Basically, water will be a solvent for a lot of things. So you can just run water through it and get rid of all the water solubles. Then when you run the vinegar, you're getting rid of a lot of things that vinegar, acid will break down and dissolve. But when you do that third, you do that sacrificial alcohol run with like a sugar wash, just a cheap old simple sugar yeast nutrient combo. And I say nutrient just to keep it going without stalling, and you can get a good alcohol yield so you can clean with it. Yeah. Once you do all three of those, you've covered all your solvents, right? You've covered your water solubility, your acidic solubility, and your alcohol soluble. So you pretty much cover all your bases. But you can also get the stuff from like a Home Depot or a Lowe's, or I'm not sure if they were, uh, hardware store, and they carry stuff that has a higher percentage of acetic acid. which you can use that instead of vinegar. You can use acetic acid just the same. Or citric acid. Yeah, citric acid. I don't know. Have you experimented with that? Damn, I'm so far behind. I'm just gonna scroll through it all. Use the amylase. Good, it's good. Yeah, it definitely helps. Definitely helps. Definitely. But like I said, I've talked to some people that were using potatoes, and there's nothing wrong with potatoes and sugar because a lot of people do that just like thin mash. There's nothing wrong with it. And I'm like, well, you can use a little amylase, high temp and your glucose, and it definitely, convert a lot of those starches. You can get by with using less sugar and save a little money on the sugars and make it a little smoother. And they're like, I don't know why I never thought to do that. They've been using it on their corn and other grains and stuff. They just never really thought about it, and I'm like, yeah, give it a try sometime. And they're like, wow, my yield was so much better and took less sugar and made a better product. Thank you. Yeah. And, be surprised. There's a lot of people out there that didn't know. All right. I'm going to kind of get caught up here. Yeah. We can get Elon to hook us up with a little rocket. We can go up there and I need a haircut, man. Look at that. Shit, man. It's just getting long. I hate it when it starts getting curly, man, on the side. Definitely get my ears lowered this week for sure. I hate getting my hair cut when it's cold, though. Damn. But you got me thinking about aging in space. Yes, I am way behind. Damn it, I'm getting caught up. I know y'all like, damn, Santa's sitting there talking about shit we were talking about 30 minutes ago. Oh, damn it. Appreciate it, Propane. That means a lot to us, brother. It really does, man. Because it's in our show. It's all of us. You all the show too. Everybody's part of it and answering the questions. This is, open forum kind of thing that it ain't all about us. We don't have, famous people on here we're interviewing and talking and not paying attention to chat and all that. We're, you know, answering your questions. It's your time. This is the show for you all, and that's why I like it, because there's a lot of questions out there and it's not so easy, trying to go and look at a bunch of videos and watch a week's worth of videos and spend hours and hours and hours and hours trying to get your questions answered and getting on Google and trying to Google answers and, not get much there. And then you say, well, okay, I'll just ask a question in one of these, Facebook groups, and you get 15 different answers and 40 different people calling you dumbass and everything else. And it's like, it turns a lot of people away from the hobby, like, hell, I don't know if I want to deal with these people or not, man. And half these people are assholes. And a lot of them are in a lot of them groups. There's a lot of assholes, and what's bad about it is they had the same damn questions just a year or two ago. I remember answering the same questions that they asked, but now that they've done it, they've understand it. Now they're going to all of a sudden condescend people that ask them the same questions they had, because we all have the same questions. And yeah, nothing pisses me off more, man. And that's one of the reasons that I started this show, is so we could go directly, right? So you wouldn't have to spend so much time looking for an answer, and you wouldn't have to deal with a bunch of clowns that don't know what the fuck they're talking about, right? So that's why, we got me and Clint on here. We know a little something about it. So not saying we're the end all, there's definitely people out there that, Patrick Heiss that know bounds more than us, but Patrick ain't able to do this, right? I'm sure he'd love to. And Alan Bishop, he's very knowledgeable as well, but he's just not able to dedicate the time. They're busy people, they're young, they got families, they got professions, and, so they don't have the time to dedicate to this, and it's, so we're here for that. We're here to help you all and help the hobby and not browbeat you, and act like you're stupid for asking the same questions everybody else does, And I think that's why it works out well. And we're real. We're not fake people. We're not putting up a front. We're not acting like we're somebody that we're not. There's a lot of that going on too. So, a lot of people 2 years ago never did it their first time at doing it, and now all of a sudden they, want to be a talk and act like they're a master distiller or something, And I ain't talking about people here on the show either. I'm talking about people 2 years ago asking simple questions and making it on the stovetop, and now there's anybody that makes it on a stovetop or browbeating, knocking people. That was you 2 years ago, bro. What are you talking about? Yeah. So if it's not liquid high temp, Frank, if and I was talking about you earlier, Frank's talking about it, the potato. If you have the powdered amylase, that's 155 degrees. And it'll go in at 155, and you need to keep it right at 150, 55, when it's activated. Below 145, it starts losing its efficacy. So if you keep it 150, 155, and it's not good. So if you have powder, it's tough. I'm trying to get through the last of my powder, and once I'm done with it, I'll never buy it again. But I'm I hate just throwing it away. But if it's the liquid high temp, it's generally 185. But like Clint said, always revert to the label on it. And if they don't tell you what temperature to use it at, I find a new source. That should definitely be on there. But most of your high temps 185, and most of your powder alpha is going to be 155. Now, what the varying temperature is on the glucose, because I think a lot of these companies are selling a liquid beta glucanase, which is 145 to 55, and some of them are selling a true glucanase or a glucoamylase, and it's closer to 110, right? So if it says 145, then you're probably getting a beta glucanase. If it's 110, you're getting more of a glucoamylase, which is probably the best of the two. But a lot of times the beta glucanase is an endogenic enzyme coming from your malts, right? And it does a good job, but it's just not quite as good at creating monosaccharides as a glucoamylase. Yeah, and again, at 185 is, that's the upper limits for your high temp amylase, 180, 185. That you want to kind of add it at the upper end of where right before it starts to denature, because that's when it's at its most active. So you want it to be good and active and very, very effective. But then again, you don't want to go over. So if you go over, 190, 195 even with your high temp, you start to denature that then as well. So 185 is a good working temp for that. All right, bye. We'll take it easy, brother. We're here on Tuesday nights and Saturday nights, so catch us same time, 8 Eastern time, U.S. time. So UK time, that's a 6-hour difference. So that's probably 12, I guess, 8, maybe 2. I don't know. Yeah. I'd say 10%, or I always just do oats by the handfuls, and I don't really consider it. Uh, um, I mean, if I was doing a 3 grain and I throw a little oats in there, I don't call it a 4 grain, right? Because I'm just so used to throwing a handful of oats in most anything other than wines and brandies. So, but because I just like the way they contribute and the mouthfeel and the creaminess and yeah, it's just good, especially oats and wheat together works real well. Nope, nope. No, your rye seed and rye is going to be a different thing. And also, a lot of times, rye seed will be pins coated or have a, uh, a coating on it to help get it started and get it going. It's a fertilizer based spray on it. That's definitely not going to be good either. But yeah, your rye that you get is going to be a different grain than just the seed. Oh, I ain't bothering my beard now. That's what I tell the barber. I said, you can touch everything from here up, but don't touch my mustache or beard. Because I went in one time and, they, here, can I trim your mustache for you? Yeah, okay. I thought they were just going to be giving a nice little even trim. She takes this little square, it's like a long square blade. She goes, eh. And before I knew it, man, and it was just like perfectly squared straight across, man. And I'm like, you ruined my mustache. I was pissed. I was like, that's not a trim, man. That's not a trim. That's no, no. Some people, not with this type of mustache. This isn't that type of mustache that you do that. For some of those, tight, thin mustaches that are real short haired and keep it pretty tight. And, yeah, that would be fine for that type of mustache. But yeah, that's not how, and I don't go that place anymore. They keep dumbasses in there. And women don't know nothing. That at that store, there's a gay guy, and he's probably the best one. When you go in, you give him your name, number, and whatever, wherever number you get, that's the barber, you get. And so that's, he had a guy working there, a gay guy, and I don't care. And so he's cuts hair by far hands and by far much better than anybody else in there. And I was kidding with my buddy, kind of after that, when I wanted to get a haircut, I was kind of driving around to see if the gay guy was working in there. And I kind of felt weird, man. I'm like driving around to see if the gay dude's working today. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. But I don't care what people do, in their bedrooms. That's up to them. As long as they don't try to hit on me, they're fine. Yeah, I've had that question before, O'Shane, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, I found the best deal on rye at Home Depot or Lowe's or something." And I'm getting it cheap, and I'm like, "No," and I think it had Penscoat or something on it too, but it's got this green stuff on it. Take it back. Or if you got some bald spots in your yard, it's good for that. But yeah, I thought it was funny that I'm driving by to see if the gay dude's working today or not, because that's the only person in that place that could cut hair. So, but I found me a new place to go. I definitely prefer a woman cut my hair though. And it's probably over here listening to my show right now, thinking, he thinks he's being sneaky. She got her headphones on. I don't want. She's been awful quiet over there. Yes, she is. I'm just kidding, honey. I'm sorry. Yeah. You just have to use more of it, and if you don't get a conversion next time, just use even more. I think we were talking before. I think as long as you keep it in the refrigerator, you get a couple of years out of it. It'll last a couple of years, a couple few. But after that, it's it definitely you need to start using a little bit more. So you'll just have to use more of it. Malt, they've been malting for ages. I've seen it. So that I think Amanda and Wayne were talking about this. How they didn't know a lot of the science and they didn't understand a lot about the malting process and a lot of the chemistry involved in the enzymes and how everything worked. And how the aileron layer of the corn kernel, once it got wet, it started releasing this natural alpha amylase that would break down the starches for the sugars to energy, to give energy for the seed to create that, to create that radical, that first root that comes out. It's called a radical. And so that's what powers all this in the cell, and it's amazing. It's just like in our bodies and in cellular growth, and it's they didn't understand the science, but they knew that there was something in there that made it better. And when they malted it, they got more alcohol and more sugars. And they didn't know exactly the science of it, but they did know that it worked and it worked better. And they knew, they figured out through trial and error, like I learned, and it's pretty ingenious, how they figured that shit out. Even though they didn't have the science to back it, they still knew that somehow this is better this way, and there's something that's happening that we're not quite sure of, but we know that it works, so we're going with it, right? That's about right. That sounds good, Richard. 155 to 195. That's a big range for the high temp. That's good. Because 155 is generally what the powder, like the general alpha amylase, even in your grains, right? The alpha. That's why you don't want to do. That's why you add your. Well, let me put up the chart here. We love charts. I love charts. But in this chart here, that right part I call it a dumbbell. It looks like a bar with dumbbell on the right and left. So on the far right, that's generally the alpha enzyme that's coming in on these malted grains. And on the higher end, like the malt, let's go barley malt. So it's hitting right on 155, right? And that barley malt, that alpha in that barley malt at 155. Now, if you go over that, it'll denature that malt, right? If you get much above that, so it'll start denaturing that alpha enzyme in that barley malt. But like the powdered enzyme that I'm talking about using, that's the same base. It comes from the malt, right? It's an extraction of that malt, and it's at 150, 55. You got to keep it in that range to make it most effective, just like coming out of barley. But the uh, the high temp, 195 is the upper end for that, and 185 is a good operating temp for it. So um, that's in line with what the chart shows for the endogenic enzyme, coming out of the plant itself. No, it's the other way around. No, beta glucanase is what you get in your malted barley and in your malts, and that's the endogenic enzyme, and that's generally, and it'll vary with different grains, but yeah, it's generally the 145, 145, 50, and the gluco is the lower temp one. And we can, the beta glucanase. No, I'm wrong. Yeah, it is the beta glucanase is the lower temp one. Let me see. How can that be? Yeah, the glucose, the higher temp one of the two. I got them reversed. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I did notice that some of them though in the liquid glucose, they'll have 110 range, and then some of them will be the 140, 45 range. So yeah, I got it backwards though. It's the glucoamylase is the higher one, in the beta glucanase is the lower one. But a lot of times they call them both glucoamylase, and regardless of the temp, because I've seen the ones, the 110, they call it glucoamylase, and and I guess at 110 that's going to be your beta glucanase, and then the 145s is going to be. But I've seen them named all glucoamylase, and some of them call for 140, 45, and then some of them call for 110. So I think for a lot of people, glucoamylase is a catch-all term for beta glucanase and glucoamylase. A lot of people don't know that they're two different things, but I got them backwards. Sure did. And right here from Firm Solutions, glucoamylase enzyme 90 to 110. And their glucoamylase, they say temperature 90 to 110. See, and that's probably the one I was looking at. So I guess you really just have to look at where you're getting them, because this Firm Solution, it says glucoamylase enzyme 90 to 110. And I think that's what I'm using. So that's why I always said the gluco was the 110. So I guess it definitely read your labels, because I thought I was wrong. I'm like, I can't believe I've been wrong all this time about that. But sure enough, the Firm Solutions is a glucoamylase enzyme. Yep, right there, biggest day, and 90 to 110. So yeah, I wasn't wrong. I was tripping, man. Clint had me like, man, I've been wrong all this time. But no, it's but your beta glucanase, which is definitely in your malts, is a 120, 35, 40 range when in your malted grains, which you're adding your malt, and based on also when you use your malt, it's going to be based on the alpha, right? So that's why on this chart, it'll have you adding your barley malt at around 155, because that's the alpha in it that activates at that temperature. And you have to have that to debranch your starches before your beta glucanase can even begin to become effective in being used. But at that 150, 55 is not hot enough to where it's going to totally denature the beta glucanase that's breaking it down. But that's probably one of the reasons the malting process doesn't get them completely broken down into a monosaccharide. So it's definitely going to be, read your labels, because glucoamylase from one company may be 145, and from like Firm Solutions and others, it's going to be a 110. So it's just based on probably the source of the actual amylase. There's a lot of different sources, and I'd say, obviously each of them have their operating temperatures. But man, Clint, you had me tripping. You're like, there's no way I've been wrong all this time. But yeah, so it just depends on where you get them. And they are definitely firm solutions, glucoamylase enzyme, temperature 90 to 110. And I think a lot of the glucoamylase that we get these days are um, the home distiller. Don't go above 135 with it. But I know a lot of people that tend to think beta glucanase and glucoamylase are the same thing, and they kind of wrap them all both into the same. See, now here's Mile High, got their distiller glucoamylase up to once below 149. So that's probably more of a beta glucanase at the higher temperatures. But again, it depends on the source. So, yeah, had me tripping out there for a minute, Clint. I was like, man, have I been wrong? Yeah, mine's about down to my belly button. It's starting to thin out a little bit though. Hammy, I don't know. I might have to go back to the different conditioner and shampoo I was using. I changed up, and it's not. It's getting a little drier and a little thinner. That might be my age too. I don't know. We appreciate having you here, man. Just bring your questions. We're all learning together. Yeah, it means a lot to us. Sure does, man. Appreciate it. He's lying. He ain't never had a beard like mine. He's just saying that to him. He's jelly. I like to kid him. Oh, Chris Palin's got a big old beard like mine too. Yes, we are. Hey, if we didn't have y'all here answering questions, we wouldn't have nothing. Really, I mean, I guess we just have to sit and talk about it. We pick topics and just talk about it. But I really enjoy answering the questions and just bullshitting and kind of being off the cuff and informal and having fun. And I really enjoy it. Yeah. Santa and I, not me and Santa. My mom was an English teacher, so yeah, I got that a lot. Does a single run on the thumper clean up the spirit enough, or do I need to rerun it using back said? I haven't had much of a difference unless I add something in post and redistill. You'll find that the distillation process is in and of itself generally used to eliminate other things, right? We distill water to get rid of impurities and other bad things, right? Just to get to the water. We kind of distill alcohol to do the same thing. So what we try to do is we try to force the distillation process to contain these impurities and try to get around it. So, we're distilling it, but at the same time, we're trying to usurp, I guess you could say, the distillation process to where we can make some of these things carry forward, right? And get some flavors. So that's why brandy's so tough. Is because a lot of times these flavors are getting distilled out. It's like, damn, it was such a good wine, and I distilled it, and now it just tastes like isopropyl alcohol. And a lot of people, don't understand that a raw alcohol coming off the still is going to have an astringency. There's going to be a lot of higher volatiles in there before you evaporate them off if you leave them out in the open. So it's not going to taste like, your seasoned vodka that's been distilled to a really high proof and a really high purity and then proofed down, with some good clean water. And so it doesn't have hardly any flavors, you don't, but it takes getting used to, and and that's how you have to learn to age. And that's why a lot of people, you know, do a lot of post flavoring, why we do a lot of infusing, is to try to add that flavor back, right, and get some of that back into it, so to make it a little bit, easier on the palate. So that's why we add wood. That's why we age. That's why we do so many things. Is because just a straight white, and some people love just a straight old white dog. They just like it. They like the astringency. They like the hotness. They like that, and there's nothing wrong with that. I kind of do too. But at the same time, if I'm drinking a brandy, I want to taste at least the fruit that it was made from. That's how I know that it was pretty successful. If I can tell you what fruit it was made with, then that's a good brandy, right? Especially if it's cleared, not post flavor. Forgot to ring the bell. So you can rerun it using back set. Using the back set will add some flavor, sure, back into it, because that's just, think about it. You had that flavorful mash or brandy wine in there, and what came off? All the water and all the alcohol. So what's left? Concentrated flavors, right? Now, don't try to drink that back set, because that shit horrible. But it is concentrated flavor, but it doesn't taste good. It'll stay on your tongue all day if you try it. And it's hard to get out of your mouth too. You have to drink that out. But it is packed full of a lot of flavors. The problem is, if you continue to do that, your flavors will get kind of muddled and muddied, and you get kind of too much of the wrong flavor, and you don't get some of your more delicate notes that really tend to probably be a little more preferable on the palate. So single pass on certain things is fine. On other things, having that second, and that's why you can definitely taste the difference between a pot still distillate and a column distillate. You're definitely, or a hybrid distillate. You're definitely going to taste the difference between the three of them. And and I would say, based on what you're running and your preferences, there's no right and wrong. I wish there was a good answer for it. But yeah, running a thumper will clean up, and you can add flavors in your thumper as well. You can add the tails to your thumper to get more production, but it just depends on what you're shooting for. And I think for a lot of people, it's especially like wine making. If you make a really high alcohol content wine and you drink it, it's like it just tastes too isopropyl. It just tastes, because we call that an astringency. It's too astringent. And the only thing that'll take that astringency out is aging process, maturation process, but B is learning that you don't really want a 20, 40 proof wine or an 18% by volume wine, right? It's better to do, the 6 to 8, like a beer, or a little higher, and that way it won't be so sharp, and but it makes for good brandies. So it's like we say, like JJ was saying, some of your best wines make for good brandies. What's going on? Monty Python, gotta love that, man. Home brewer, absolutely. Yeah, home brewers make good whiskey makers. That's what I like. They have a good knowledge of the malting process and of the malts and how the diastatics work, and your seasoned beer makers make good distillers because they do understand that. And yeah, I'm getting itchy nose again this week. getting allergies. Um, yeah, you were trying to undermine him. Yeah, I definitely ask you questions, brother. Yeah. Yeah, you've been adding them at 110. That's just different, different enzymes. Yeah, it's probably a different source. And again, I think it's to where what they derive their enzymes from, and I think a lot of them come from a natural they get it from a natural product, from different grains and stuff, and they just isolate it. And I don't think it's synthesized. So, okay, I get the occasional 5-gallon batch of brew that doesn't add up, doesn't meet the metrics. Uh, there is, if you have a lot, if it's hoppy, I'm going to probably say it's not necessarily going to make the best drink, but if you can run it over some plates and maybe double run it over some plates, you can get rid of a lot of that skunkiness. Um, Oily, the hops have a little bit of oil, and it's going to require a little extra cleaning in your still to get it out. But if it's a beer that didn't have a high hop content or any hops, and like a different type of beer, definitely. But some of these beer makers will probably be able to answer that question a lot better. I do know that using old beer from like an old beer keg, I've been there, done that, and yeah, that doesn't necessarily make the best. But I didn't have a column at the time, and didn't have the reflux going on that I could to pump that up to 185, 190 proof and get rid of a little bit of that. And I guess if you want to distill it and pair that with something that would work with that flavor a little bit, then it would probably be okay if you infuse something that particular flavor would work with. But the hops generally is a big killer. If it's a high hop beer, I would probably steer away from it. Yeah, corn sugar. Yeah, now regular sugar, table sugar is a sucrose with the glucose and a fructose bonded together. So that's a sucrose. That's regular table sugar. Now, corn sugar is just glucose. It's just pure glucose bonded together. And like your dextrose and your corn syrups will have some more complex sugars mixed in them, but for the most part, they're glucose based and monosaccharide. But there will be some oligosaccharides and disaccharides in a corn syrup as well, especially a high fructose corn syrup. But like a regular dextrose, which is a corn based, it's a powder form instead of a syrup, and it's just pure glucose monosaccharide, and it's probably as good as inverted sugar because it's just a glucose monosaccharide, and that's really what the yeast prefer. But if you can invert sugar, which is a table sugar, and in the inversion process, you're breaking that glucose and that fructose bond. It's a glycosidic bond. They're bonded together. It's a pretty strong bond, and you use acid and boiling to separate it. And it basically attaches to water molecules and the acid, and it helps break it apart and it cleaves it. Um, and that works real well too because yeast love a monosaccharide. The issue with inverting sugar is a lot of times people go too far and they caramelize the sugar, and that ends up making it more complex than it was. It takes a disaccharide and makes it an oligosaccharide, which is something that the yeast can't consume. It's called a limit dextrin, and the yeast can't consume those. So you kind of defeated the purpose. And it takes a little bit of time and effort involved. So once you consider all that, and if you can get a good deal on the glucose, it's probably just best just to get the glucose. But the inverted sugar is really good. A lot of pastry chefs use it because it's sweeter than sugar. And believe it or not, it gives you a sweetness that's sweeter than just a table sugar, and it's dissolves on your tongue better, and the enzymes in your mouth can break it down quicker and better, and it's a better flavor. Yeah, yeah, they're two different, totally different things. Yeah, and they actually do overlap temperings. Yeah, on some of them, and but I think a lot of people, I've seen a lot in the groups. Now, I'm not, when I say people confuse the two, I don't mean pros and people that are working in distilleries or anything like that. I'm talking about people that have been informally taught, I should say, or learned by reading Reddit and reading a lot and going to places and asking in groups and stuff. A lot of the groups, they don't understand the difference in a glucoamylase and a beta glucanase. To a lot of people, it's the same thing. It's like fours and heads. A lot of people call fours and heads the same thing, and they're not. It's just different. A lot of people don't say there's no such thing as four shots. It's all just heads, tails, and hearts. And no, there's four shots, then heads, then hearts, then tails. And that's the way it is. That's the science. But a lot of people like bundling things, and they don't. Because somebody else taught it or they read it on the internet. It's a fact, right? There's a lot of that. Just because something's written and it's on the internet doesn't make it fact. Hell, uh, I used to, have a good time going to what's the website everybody goes to, the encyclopedia one, the web encyclopedia. What's it called? Shit, my mind's anyway. Wikipedia, yeah, that's it. Wikipedia. Um, I've seen so much shit on there that's wrong, just patently false wrong. It's funny, So a lot of people, oh, well, I like Wikipedia had it. Wikipedia is just. I think it's better now that it's probably getting a little bit more AI based. It's probably getting a little more fact, but at the same time, there's a lot of mistakes in AI as well. So a lot of times, oh, well, Wikipedia says it. It's definitely, and then I have to point them to a more scientific site that says, well, science might have a little bit to say about that because they're wrong. So I used to spend a lot of time on Wikipedia looking for stuff that's wrong just to entertain myself. It's boring life. Huh? Yeah. I might work comes early. Oh, you don't have to work tomorrow. It's Sunday. Yeah, it's not Tuesday. Oh, Shane, it just depends on what you're doing. It depends on what you're making. And when you say sugars, that's a broad thing. There's lots of different sugars, brown sugars, white sugars, refined sugars. There's so many different sugars. So um, got to be more specific, like a table sugar versus brown sugar or dark brown sugar. There's so many different ones, but it'll be different depending on what you're making. You don't want to use table sugar if you're making a mead. That's not going to make a very good mead, right? So honey, definitely going to be what you're going to have to go with for the honey shiner meads. Um, Inverted sugar, like I was saying, you have to use acid. You have to get it to 236 degrees exactly. You have to worry about crystallization. You have to, there's so many, things to do. You got to do just right. Oh, so many things you got to do just right. To get it to do just, perfectly. 236. You got to get your little candy thermometer out there that's accurate, and it's got to be 236 degrees Fahrenheit. To get that reaction right between the acid and the sugars and breaking that glycosidic bond. So, but it just depends on what you're making. Hey, man, you had me tripping out. I was like, have I been wrong? Or, because I'm pretty sure that my glucose said 110. And I know I'm getting that, that's good stuff that I'm getting. And so I had to look it up. I'm like, fuck, I couldn't be wrong all this time like that. So it definitely, that's why I always say when it comes to your bottom amylase, your high temp pretty much 185. Your powdered alpha 155. Pretty much set stone, don't care where the source is. But when it comes to your glucose and your beta glucanase, you definitely want to refer to that label because I think they source them from different vegetables and different sources. And I think based on the source is going to be a different denaturing temperature. But I knew my glucose was 110. I'm like, I'm not going to have to go upstairs and look at my label again. I know I use that shit all the time. I was like, pretty damn sure it says 110. You had me tripping, bro. You had me tripping. Yeah, I made shine. I made shine for 30 years before I ever made wine, and or well, over 30 years. But I've never been beer maker. Elderberry makes great wine. Elderberries are one of those things that's really good to combine with other berries in winemaking. It's one of those that works good with a lot of them. It works great with blueberries, blackberries, raspberries. It works and it's great alone. So elderberries is good in wine making. Now, as far as distillation and brandy making, it works as well, but definitely great for winemakers. To get a combination. Even elderberry wine's good, and it'll get bitter if you ferment it dry, especially. But you can kind of keep it sweet. Yeah, it does take the bite away. It sure does. Yeah, inverted sugar definitely, or glucose is going to be definitely better than just a pure sugar for sure. It definitely, and it's keeping the yeast happy. That's part of it. Yeah, Wikipedia. I'm behind. Not too far, just 6 pence. Yeah, sometimes I can't think of words. Funnel. It's just seen me a month or two ago trying to come up with the word funnel, man. It's just that's what happens to your mind when you start getting old, man. It's very frustrating for me. So you see me get mad at myself, it'll be because it's something I can't remember. I know I once knew and now I don't. It's yeah, you'll get there. It's not a happy time. Yeah, and I call them, high heads, low heads, high hearts, low hearts, high tails, low tails. Um, and I label them that way. That way, when you're making cuts, you know what to pitch and what to use in cuts and what to rerun the next time. Yeah, there's a lot of falsehoods in Wikipedia for sure. I use a lot of Zolka, Richard. Yeah, it is good stuff. I like Zolka. It's a Moreno sugar. It's real good stuff, and it's not refined. Is it's kind of a semi-refined. It's not refined as much as like a pure white table sugar. So, but it's not like a what do they call it? Turbinado. It's not like a dark turbinado. It's kind of in between. It's real good. I like it. Marina Zolka. Sure is good stuff. Yeah, fundamentally, they're all the same, as far as chemical formula. But lemons and limes probably chemical formula look a lot alike too. And a wheated whiskey versus a potato, whiskey would chemically look a lot like, as far as the atomic and the molecular compound would look a lot alike as well, but the flavor will be different because of the flavonoids and stuff. So yeah, you definitely can tell the differences in the sugar, even like the beet sugar versus the pure cane sugar, and pure cane sugar versus molasses, of course, and yeah, you can definitely tell the difference, especially in an inverted sugar and a glucose, but versus a table sugar, you can definitely taste the difference in the bite and in the hotness. So and the yeast can tell the difference too. And I think that's the most underlying factor is the yeast are consuming this, and so that's like saying, can you tell the difference when your yeast is eating it? That's like combining chicken and hamburger, for the yeast, because they can definitely tell the difference in it, even though it's meat, So yeah, and the yeast will react differently, based on what they consume, right? So yeah, you can definitely tell the difference. But some people, I shouldn't say everybody, some people can, some people can't, some people, you know, can't tell the difference between a good Weller and early times. And I'm mine, and I don't have the best palate in the world either, so I'm probably the one of the worst at, at probably picking up certain notes and stuff, like, oh, I'm getting these florals and getting a nutty, and now I'm getting almond, and oh wow, I just got a chocolate. I just taste I just taste whiskey. So yeah, I don't get a lot of that. I think COVID had a little bit to do with that. I think before COVID, I was a lot more tuned to flavors, but after getting the COVID a couple times and not losing my sense of smell and taste, it's definitely, I think, had an impact. But yeah, you can definitely tell the difference in the type of sugar that they used. And there's a good way to test it. You can do sugar washes. Try a sugar wash with dextrose versus a sugar wash with table sugar. I guarantee you're going to taste the difference. And try that mixed with a honey. They're all sugars. Try it with a honey and a molasses. And it's definitely with the molasses, you definitely going to get that grunge from the black strap or the molasses flavors. Yeah, if they start to get a little bit brown on you, golden is okay, but once they start turning brown, you've just you've just made a more complex sugar that your yeast can't eat. So you may have to use some glucose to help break that up. All right, Carl, take it easy, brother. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see y'all Tuesday. Yeah, it's getting about time to wrap up anyway. I'm going to try to get caught up real quickly here, and uh, but I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. Had a pretty good night. Yeah. Glucoamylase is pretty much what you need. But like Clint's talking about, when you deal with certain grains that are high in glucans, it's some people have a sensitivity to glucans. Celiacs have a sensitivity to these glucans, and in rye and wheat and oats, they're high in glucans. It's a little bit different than the gelatinization of corn, right? You'll see a little bit different. They gelatinize differently, and it's just it requires a little bit different enzyme to help break them down. Beta glucanase is probably going to work as well to break down those glucans. You know, uh, like Clint's talking about his Sebamil and stuff, or works real well for those glucans versus just a glucoamylase for just breaking up those trisaccharides and oligosaccharides into disaccharides and monosaccharides and getting them to where a yeast can eat them. So they have different purposes, and there's a lot of different enzymes geared towards different glucanase, right? It's a glucanase instead of a glucoamylase, and that's different. And a lot of people don't understand, but it's pretty complex. But at the same time, it's just different, you know. And again, different temperatures, so it depends on the source of where it came from, and different temperatures that you use it at. Elderberry syrup, man, I bet that's good. I don't know, man. It might be so damn good as a syrup. You know, it's like my blueberry syrup. It's and my blueberry wine. It's so hard for me to distill that. But I've got some pineapple blackberry that's pretty dang on good. You'll see me sipping on that. It's 1:30. I don't have them in here. I had to move them because of my network guy coming in. Yeah, I guess I got a. Last night I got my. Do you find that the time to ferment changes with? Absolutely, Tanner. Good question. Um, Now you'll find that fructose takes a little bit longer than a glucose. So a lot of your fruits will take a little bit longer to break down and ferment than a lot of your glucose, uh, based. So brown sugar will have a different taste. Yeah. So uh, honey will be even slower. You know, it takes a little bit longer to make your mead than it would like a grain. You know, grains, man. Those once you break a grain down into the starches and break it down into a monosaccharide glucose, or just fermenting pure dextrose, few days it's done, man. I mean, it's fast. It's very efficient. Same with an inverted sugar or a sugar wash. They generally go pretty quickly. But like a fruit brandy or a honey mead and things like that will definitely take a little bit longer, right? So yeah, you'll see some fermentation times, and that'll vary too, depending on the yeast you use. And you want to use yeast specific things for each different type of mash. There it does have an impact, huge impact on flavor. A lot of people say, oh, it doesn't matter what yeast you use. There's nothing that says I don't know what I'm talking about anymore when I hear somebody saying that. Now, I don't care if somebody just wants to buy one type of yeast and use it for everything, absolutely fine. But to say that they're all the same, no, that's just patently false. They're definitely, you can get some different flavors based on the yeast that you use on anything, right? Now, I'm not saying that everybody should have 40 different yeast for every different thing they do. Um, and you can basically use just one. You could use that EC1118 for everything. You can use Deity for everything, but it's not going to make a great wine if you want to use Deity. EC1118 would make a pretty good wine. It's for champagne, whereas EC1118 is probably not going to be the best thing for a beer, or a grain. Deity would probably be better for that because it's more suited toward it and geared towards it. So fermentation times will vary based not only on the sugars, but also on the yeast that you use and the temperatures that you want to use them at. But good question, Tanner. Just like me, man. We do Taco Bell a lot, man. Friday night, a lot of Friday nights we'll do our little late Taco Bell run. It doesn't bother me so much, A lot of people, I just can't. I just can't eat them late and go to bed right on it. Fill up on it and then go to bed. Used to, I could do that. I could drink, get the munchies, pig out, and go to sleep. Wake up, feel fine. And I get a little frog in my throat. I'm gonna have to have another drink and put it here. But yeah, we used to do that, man. No problem. These days, oh man, I wake up sick. The other night, we made the mistake of going to Taco Bell and filling it up. Just I guess last Friday, we filled up on tacos, and I'm like, yeah, I got a little room left for some ice cream. And I ate that ice cream, and then I fell asleep. And man, I'm telling you what, about 3 a.m., I woke up. Oh my God, I felt so bad. I had to take one of my stomach pills. I felt horrible. Yeah, you'll definitely notice a difference. You definitely will. All right, Tanner. Thanks for joining us, brother. We'll see you Tuesday. Same time, same back channel, folks. So we're going to have to get out of here. Getting a little late questions, though. I hate leaving them. We got some questions. Wood alcohol is methanol, and that's made with the cellulose. See, that's the a lot of times when you're using pectic enzymes, you get the pectic enzymes will have cellulase in it as well as the pectinase, right? And they're there because it helps break that cell wall down as well as breaking the pectins in the fruit down to get to the juice. They break that cell wall to get even more of the juice and the sugars, right? So when you do that, that cellulase will end up eating some of the cellulose in that, and that's wood alcohol. That's how you make wood alcohol. In fact, it's more difficult to make and more expensive to make wood alcohol than it is an ethanol. But yeah, wood alcohol is top poisonous. That's the methanol. That's the 4 shots that we talk about. I'm glad you asked that question because everybody needs to know that, and that's very important. And that's why fours and heads aren't the same thing because fours have more methanol. Now we do know that you will get a a little bit of methanol throughout the whole run, right? But it's much more concentrated early on than later. Um, but yeah, and Clint's got a point. Wood alcohol is poison. So is ethanol. You drink too much, it'll kill you. It's toxic. That's why I've always thought it funny. You're going to kill yourself adding that. Adding those toxins to your alcohol. Well, alcohol itself is a toxin. That's how we get intoxicated, right? And they don't have to be. You can get a keg still, and you can do corn liquor from just basically from yellow dent corn and keep it as cheap. You just buy your enzymes, grind your corn up, get your yeast, get your bread. You don't have to have expensive yeast for the corn, and do it on a keg still. And you can be in cheap, and make great corn liquor. That's all you need is just a yellow dent corn makes really good liquor. And it might not be as unique a flavor as some of the heirloom corns, but it's a damn good liquor. And Pappy's and some of your finest bourbons and stuff were all made with yellow dent corn. They don't use heirloom corns in these big commercial distilleries. They're using yellow dent #2 corn. And people say, oh, that's feed corn. It is corn. It is yellow dent #2 corn, some of which is made into feed. Some of it is made into meal. Some of it goes into a still. So it depends on the final use as to what it is. But not all yellow dent #2 is a feed corn. It's not designated that. It's designated yellow dent #2. There's lots of varieties, but it's a field corn that's bred for its high starch content. That high starch content is great for cows because they got multi-chambered stomach that break that starches down. They got enzymes in their stomachs. They help breaks all that down into the sugars they need to give them the energy to, that's why we eat food for energy, right? So, yeah, it's not, there's a lot of people scoff at yellow dent corn like it's just made for animals. And they're like, who you're eating cat food or dog food or cow food. And it's like, you might be an idiot if you think that, right? It's obviously not a farmer or never been around. So the yellow dent #2, just because it's used in feed and used in deer feed and other things, there's lots of sources. Now, some of the grades that you get for cow feed might not be as good as the grade that they get for making Martha White, but trust me, it's all yellow dent corn. Well, I don't know. They use some of the white corns and stuff in some of the wider corn mills, different corn mills. They use different corns, but a yellow dent corn is a yellow dent corn. So You can get it cheap. You don't have to get expensive. You don't have to have all this stuff. And I tell you what, I've seen people take I think it's a 15-gallon bever and crank out some of the best corn liquor made with yellow mint, better than some people with all the apparatuses and all this fancy copper and everything else going everywhere. They ain't producing nothing any better. So take it for what you will. You know, it's a lot of the knowledge and how you do it. Wow. Man, are they expensive? How much, man? How much for a tote of molasses? 275. How's it going, brother? Damn, man, I'd love that too. You better jump on that, Scott. How much is it? All right, propane. Thanks for coming in, brother. Yeah, we'll be here Tuesday. Have a good weekend. Awesome. See, we collected all the way through the show. Now you're in the tail. That's perfect. Um, that's a good question. You know, if you use an SCR or you're using a stove, it's rather easy to do. You know, adjust on the dials in the electric. You know, on a propane, you know, it's a little bit tougher because on windy days, right outside, windy days, it's sometimes the wind's blowing on that, and you're not getting as much heat as you normally would. You know, given the same height of the flame, so you'll just have to adjust that flame based on the wind and stuff out there and the temperature, right? So it's tough. Now you will want to adjust your propane burners to where it doesn't have a lot of yellow, right? So that's one of the biggest mistakes I see, and they got black soot on their pots and stuff too. So if you see a lot of black soot on the bottom of your pot, that's telling you that you need to adjust your burner because you get too much soot, right? So you want only yellow on the tips, and there's a little adjustment for air where the gas goes into that banjo burners and your burners that you can adjust the amount of air that's drawn in with that. And you definitely want to adjust that where it's just yellow on the very tips, right? So having that adjusted properly as well means a lot. So it'll vary. It's tough, but it's tough to get that, especially outside in wind on propane. And that's one of the things that again electric comes in so handy because you can get so much more consistent in your heat. I start out on with wood. You talk about tough getting consistency. Then you just have to go by the drip, and you're raking coals out and pushing them back in and trying to regulate it that way, and throw a log on the fire. Oh shit, pull it back off. Yeah. So yeah, it's even tougher with wood, trust me. But it just experience, time and experience, and you'll know when you're outside. You'll start building little wind barriers to help break the wind, and you'll start making a little. Some people stack bricks around, and have one little area open where they can see and put the burner in, and that helps cut down on a lot of the wind as well, and channel all the heat towards your steel. So there's things that you can do to help to prevent that and make it better. Uh, but experience, time, you'll learn. That's all right, brother. That's all right. You can go back, watch it. That's the beauty of it. Hey, most people watch us later. Most people, you know, we'll get anywhere probably 50, 60. I mean, it shows sometimes 20 or 30 on here at the top, but that's just on the Facebook place that you're watching from. So it'll vary depending on where you're watching it from, the numbers at the top. So those are kind of deceiving. There's more people watching than that, probably double that on YouTube. But I've got a Facebook thing that shows how many people actually watch it on all the different Facebook. I stream to a lot of different Facebook channels, right? So you'll not see all the different people watching from all the different places, but combined, we probably get less than 10% of the people watching it live. And I'd like to encourage more people to watch it live, especially if you have questions. Again, make a YouTube, a fake name on YouTube. It doesn't have to be your real name. If you want to be anonymous, I know a lot of people don't want to ask questions because they want to be anonymous, right? And I can understand that because what we're doing is not legal everywhere. So if that's the case, make you a fake name and ask you questions. And also in the groups, you can use a nickname in the groups now, and Facebook has made that. So you can just join the DIY Shine and stuff. I know I enabled it on that. I'm not sure if it's enabled in the militia or not, but you can make nicknames in there, right? Or pin names, whatever you want to call it, and be anonymous and ask your questions, and that way you don't have to worry about who's watching. Yeah, arm length. You want to keep your thumper fairly close to your steel because the longer the arm, the more reflux and the more cooling you get. So you want to kind of, when you're using a thumper, you want to try to minimize that cooling effect because you want to try to maintain as much heat going into that to avoid, a lot of people that have their thumpers too far away from their steel tends to fill up with water. So if a lot of people try to preheat it to do that, to kind of avoid that, but it's best just to keep it fairly close, and that way your temperature will be of your thumper will remain a little bit higher on the average, and you won't get as much water built up. You'll get less reflux. You'll get probably a little proof coming off, but might carry a little more flavor. Yeah, and the angle of the arm, will help. Will vary as well. So if you're going straight out, it's going to do one thing versus angling down towards your thumper will be more, of a reflux. So more flavor. Yep. Yeah. Like Clinton saying, insulate it. A lot of people insulate it to try to hold that heat in. If it gets further from your steel, insulating it works well. Using pipe wrap, on your pipes helps a lot. $100 for a tote. Wow, that's freaking awesome, man. If I live close to it, I'd buy all 3 of them, man. That's a lot of rum, bro. Hell yeah. Yeah, if I live close to there, I'd get every damn one of those $100 pop. Oh, 200, 275. Still, that's a good price. That's less than $1 a gallon. Shit, yeah, bro. I'd definitely take a couple of them if I didn't have to pay shipping. Technique, aging, grain bill. It's not just yellow dent. They're going to use wheat. They're going to use barley, and yeast has an impact, and aging, barrel aging and what type barrel. But yeah, there's a lot of it's done with the exact. If I can show you some of the, in fact, we've got on our Facebook pages, I've got all the different a lot of the different grain bills for a lot of the different whiskeys, and you can see that many of them are the exact same percentages of grains, and yet they taste different. So it all is technique and how it's aged. Yeah. And the type still, how it's done, all has a huge impact on it. No, I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't, man. It went pretty quick, bro. Going for the Seahawks. Yeah, I'm kind of pulling for the Seahawks. Nothing against New England Patriots. I mean, they just won so many times. I'd like to see somebody else win. Got to work late on Tuesday, Richard. I will miss you, brother. Definitely miss you. Tell Charlene I fell asleep watching them the other night on Thursday. I woke up and they were just frozen on my screen. I'm like, what happened, man? Did the show lock up? It was like 3 a.m, and I'm like, damn, I fell asleep. Right? I don't know. It was probably around 10 o'clock and woke up and there they all were frozen right on my screen. Yeah, we'll miss you Tuesday, brother. Don't work too hard. All right, y'all. We're gonna pull the plug here. It's 11:30 now. Damn. Yeah, we go on forever. I tell you, in the early days, man, I'd sit and talk along with other people asking questions. I'd do it till 10 the next morning, man. We start out at 8 at night, and 12 hours later, I'd still be going, man. But yeah, those days are I can't do that anymore. Hell yeah, brother. I'd buy him. I wish I was close by. I'd say somebody scoop him up pretty quick, Scott. I'd be all over that, man, because that should last a long time, man. It'll keep. I mean, it may show, that's why I'd like to buy expired stuff because there's certain things that's a best buy. It's not expiring, it's just a best buy date. And it might not be great for making molasses, biscuit, whatever, or for cooking, but for rum making, yeah. Have you ever seen Dunder Pits? Yeah, that'll be good. Lord, I've drunk a lot, man. I'd say I've drunk a couple of quarts in one night. That was a lot of moonshine. A couple of quarts of moonshine. I did that at Maggie Valley just not too long ago. I drank pretty much almost a quart of Mark Morgan's coffee shine, which helped, because it was. And then I drank probably over a quart that day of just mixed stuff and a quart of corn I was carrying around. So I probably a little over a couple of quarts in one day. But yeah, I've drank to the point where I drank 40 some shots tequila when I was down in Mexico too. It's kind of I about gave myself alcohol poisoning that night. It wasn't good tequila either. All right, y'all. Thanks everybody tuning in. And we will see you all on Tuesday. But till then, everybody have a great weekend. Don't forget to watch the Super Bowl tomorrow and have a good time party with your friends and family. And we will see you Tuesday at 8. Till then, shine on. Peace out. Have a good one. Love y'all.